My name is Jennifer, a 32-year-old professional. My husband Donnie is 30 and also employed. We got married 2 years ago. Donnie might seem a bit unreliable at times, but he's a kind-hearted person and quite capable of managing the household chores. I'm a career-driven woman, finding fulfillment in my work and the achievements it brings. I work in the New York metropolitan area, a place where hard work is recognized and rewarded. However, the possibility of relocations looms and there is no established policy for maternity or parental leave. Many female employees tend to resign upon marriage or starting a family. Initially, I also preferred my career over domestic life and had no plans of getting married. When Donnie proposed, expressing his desire to marry me, I initially turned him down. I love my job, I said. I'm a section chief now, but I want to climb higher. I can't picture settling down or having kids. However, Donnie understood my ambitions and promised we would share the housework and not have children. His understanding nature eventually won me over, and I agreed to marry him. Although we both work and sometimes don't divide the chores exactly as planned, we support each other and manage pretty well. We face some annoying comments from my in-laws like, "You should prioritize your home over your work," or "Aren't you going to have kids?" But it's not too troublesome since Donnie always stands up for me. Living with Donnie has been a pleasant experience, and I've come to appreciate the beauty of married life. Then one day, my supervisor, the department manager, called me in to discuss a potential transfer to a branch office. He said, "What do you think? The position is at a regional branch, but you'll be back at headquarters after 2 years. You'll be a section chief at the new location, and if you keep up the good work, a promotion is guaranteed upon your return. You could even become the first female department head. Not a bad offer, right?" Accepting or rejecting this transfer would significantly impact my career. In our company, everyone who has advanced to department manager or higher has undergone a transfer. Refusing could mean staying at the section chief level with the risk of demotion or being moved to an irrelevant position. Before marriage, I would have jumped at this opportunity without hesitation. But now, as a married woman, I felt a bit restrained. I told my department manager, "Thank you for considering me. Personally, I would like to view this positively. However, since it involves a transfer, I need to discuss it with my husband. Could I get back to you after that?" He replied, "Oh, right, you're married. You can choose between going alone or moving with your family. Discuss it thoroughly. I'll be expecting a positive answer." When I got home, I talked to Donnie about it. "I've been offered a transfer," I explained. "I might have to go to the countryside, but if I work hard for 2 years, I can return here. If I continue to perform well, I can get promoted. I want to accept this offer if you're okay with it, Donnie. We can either move together, or I can go alone. What do you think?" Donnie seemed surprised at first, but after some thought he said, "Your dream can come true if you accept this transfer, right, Jennifer? I can't move with you because of my job here, but don't worry about me. Go for it." With Donnie's encouragement, I informed the company that I would be moving alone for the transfer and began negotiating the terms and conditions. The company agreed to cover my relocation expenses. Additionally, they offered to treat my commute days home from the remote location as on-duty time and provided a decent benefits package. These factors convinced me to accept the transfer to the branch office. After receiving the official transfer order, I made the decision to relocate to the countryside. I found out I could rent a company apartment at a reasonable price, so that's where I opted to live. On the day of the move, the movers had already transported my belongings, and my husband came to see me off at the station. "Thanks for seeing me off. I'll keep in touch regularly and try to come home as often as I can." "Yeah, I'll be waiting. Just because you're working remotely, don't overdo it." "Same goes for you. It's time to go. Take care." "Okay, I'm heading out." And so, my journey as a remote employee began. I had initially planned to return home during extended holidays and quieter periods, but trouble soon arose at the branch office shortly after my transfer. I can't take orders from a woman. I don't trust someone who just appeared out of nowhere. I encountered resistance from the local employees who refused to acknowledge my authority. Baseless rumors circulated about me, my directives were ignored, and even my phone calls went unanswered. In the midst of this, a serious mistake occurred in a project that one of my subordinates had been overseeing, deliberately excluding me from the process. The subordinate responsible was visibly shaken. Naturally, as their supervisor, I took full responsibility. I found myself consumed with rectifying the issue, offering apologies, not only to regain lost ground, but also to mend relations with my team. Witnessing my challenges, my supervisor offered some guidance. I've been through a transfer myself, so I understand what you're going through. It might feel unjust, but you can't simply impose your authority here. Effective communication, empathy, and building relationships laterally are key. Taking my supervisor's words to heart, I focus on forging horizontal connections by spending more time with everyone at the branch. Despite not initially being part of the neighborhood association, I discovered that the company's rental housing fell under its umbrella, prompting me to join. Before I realized it, I found myself struggling to carve out personal time and often unable to return to my home, where my husband patiently awaited my return. I kept in touch with my husband, but after a few months of remote work, it became increasingly difficult to reach him at night via phone or text. "I'm stuck at the office late every day. It's chaos," he'd explain. Exhausted, I often found myself drifting off to sleep. His explanations seemed plausible, and amidst my own busy schedule, I didn't think much of it, focusing my energy on my work, even during a rare slow period when I decided to return to our home in New York on short notice. I couldn't reach him. So, I abruptly left my remote location and headed home. Upon opening the door, a strange feeling enveloped me. A woman I didn't recognize dashed to greet me, saying, "Justin, welcome back. If only I'd known you were coming home early, I would have prepared." The woman and I stood frozen, staring at each other in disbelief. Eventually, she broke the silence. "May I ask who you are? And who might you be?" "This is my home," I replied firmly. "There must be some misunderstanding. I live in this house," she insisted. After a feeble exchange of arguments, we decided to step outside to verify the house number. To my astonishment, the nameplate displayed the custom one I had ordered. "The key fits, and the nameplate is correct. This is my house. I'm going in," I declared. "Wait, what are you doing?" "Stop," she protested. Ignoring her protests, I pushed past and entered the house. Once inside, I immediately noticed the drastic changes. New curtains, different furniture, a complete overhaul of the interiors. In the living room, a framed photo captured my husband and the woman at a theme park. The kitchen held mugs unfamiliar to me, while the bathroom revealed strange toothbrushes and skincare products. Even the shower boasted women's shampoo and conditioner. As I inspected further, the bed linen sported a design I didn't recognize, and the wardrobe held only the woman's clothes, with none of mine in sight. My husband's belongings were tucked away in a room at the back of the house, as if the woman had seamlessly moved in and taken over while I stood there in shock. I swung the front door open. "I'm back. Lola, did you invite a friend over?" I asked. "Justin, thank goodness you're here. This woman just walked in like she owns the place," Lola exclaimed. The man the woman referred to as Justin was undoubtedly my husband. Catching sight of me, he looked taken aback. "What are you doing here?" he asked. "Donnie, since when did you go by Justin? Can you explain what's happening?" I confronted him. "What are you talking about? This is Justin, isn't it, Justin?" he replied hesitantly. "Well, you see, caught between us, my husband appeared flustered. "Lola, this man's real name is Donnie. Isn't that what's on your driver's license?" "And I'm Donnie's wife, Jennifer," I interjected. "That's not true. He told me he was divorced," Lola retorted. "Donnie, you need to explain everything clearly," I demanded. "Jennifer, you were hardly ever home, and I felt lonely. So I thought I'd give a dating app a try and met Lola," Donnie confessed. "I see. So Justin is your alias on the dating app?" I inquired. "No, it's not like that. I was worried about using my real name, so I used a fake one. But I kept my last name," Donnie explained. "And why lie about being divorced?" In Lola's dating app profile, she mentioned, "I've only ever attended all-girls schools and have never dated a man before. Looking for someone who's willing to be serious about a relationship with the goal of marriage." It really struck a chord with me, so I fibbed about being divorced to win Lola over, and we ended up moving in together. "Why on earth would you do that?" I exclaimed in disbelief. At that moment, my husband launched into a defense of his actions. "It's because you're always away for work. It's only natural for a man to crave companionship. We've been leading separate lives due to your demanding job and the overtime and weekend shifts. I just wanted a cozy home where my wife would be waiting for me with dinner ready," he explained defiantly. I was stunned by his confession, realizing that my perception of his supportiveness towards my career might have been misguided. But that doesn't excuse what you did. Your actions were despicable. If you wanted to be with someone else, you should have had the decency to end our marriage first. Why didn't you do the right thing? I demanded. I cared for both of you. I never intended to leave either of you, my husband defended himself. After everything you've done, it was inevitable that I would find out when I returned. It's beyond belief that you thought you could deceive me. I shot back. Well, if you had kept your promise and returned home, none of this would have happened. Your absence pushed me to seek companionship elsewhere, he argued. What nonsense. I've explained to you how demanding my work has been, I retorted. Our argument escalated into a heated exchange, with the woman my husband had been involved with standing there, visibly shaken. She realized she had been deceived by a married man and dragged into his deceitful game. So it was all a lie? You've made a fool of me. I'm leaving right now, she declared, storming out. Lola, please, just hear me out, my husband pleaded as he attempted to halt the other woman, who was hastily packing her belongings. Don't you dare touch me with those deceitful hands of yours. I can't trust a single word that comes out of your mouth, she spat back, her voice laced with anger and betrayal. With a final curse directed at my husband, the other woman stormed out, heading for her parents' home. Fuming with anger and a desire for retribution, I resolved to punish my husband for his infidelity. Gathering evidence meticulously, I amassed a collection of proof to take back with me. Upon returning to my work assignment, I wasted no time in hiring a detective to uncover details about my husband's mistress. The investigation unearthed that she was the daughter of an executive at a company closely associated with my husband's business partner. Armed with this information, I instructed my lawyer to dispatch evidence of the affair to both my husband's residence and the other woman's parents. Upon receiving the incriminating documents, my husband vehemently protested, expressing his reluctance for a divorce. Unmoved by his pleas, I braced myself for a protracted legal battle, even considering the possibility of taking the matter to court. Unexpectedly, the other woman's family reached out to my lawyer, prompting us to arrange a meeting at their office. To my surprise, the other woman and her parents showed up, offering their sincerest apologies. We are deeply sorry. Our daughter's actions have caused you immense trouble, and we take full responsibility for that. She has always been sheltered and quite naive about the world. Despite our efforts to arrange a marriage for her with someone we deemed suitable, she longed for a more liberated love. She met your husband without our knowledge and, unfortunately, got carried away without truly understanding who he was. She mentioned meeting a divorced man on a dating app and expressed a desire to move in with him. Despite our pleas for her to cease contact with him, she refused to listen. She became so entangled in her fantasies that she ran away from home to be with him. Upon realizing she was the other woman, she was devastated and has since sought therapy. We are prepared to offer you a settlement of $50,000, and we kindly request that you keep this matter confidential. With solemn expressions, the other woman and her parents extended their hands, shaking mine firmly. I appreciate your apology. However, I'll accept it under one condition. I'm in the process of pursuing a divorce, but my husband is unwilling to agree. If you're willing to cooperate by providing testimony if this escalates to a trial, then I'll agree to the settlement, I stated firmly. We agreed to cooperate, but we're concerned about our daughter's future. We prefer to avoid any permanent legal repercussions, they responded. Fortunately or unfortunately, my husband's workplace is a client of yours, I revealed. In an unexpected turn of events, the woman my husband had been unfaithful with and I formed an unlikely alliance. Together, we plotted to teach him a lesson. His workplace would soon face a crisis due to his altercation with an executive at one of their client companies. Naturally, all blame would fall squarely on my husband. Meanwhile, back at home, his parents remained oblivious to the turmoil, attempting to reach out to him as they always did. Jennifer isn't answering our calls, and she won't return them either. Is she so wrapped up in work that she's forgotten about us? When is she planning to come back? We miss seeing our grandchild, his mother lamented. Mom, you don't understand. I cheated on Jennifer while she was away on assignment, and now it seems like we're headed for a divorce, my husband confessed. His mother's response was surprising. That woman who neglects Donnie to focus on her job is to blame. Perhaps it's best if you break up with Jennifer and reconcile with the woman you had the affair with, she suggested. It became apparent that my in-laws had chosen to align themselves with the other woman's family, possibly because they perceived them as wealthier than ours. They launched a series of attacks against me, bombarding me with calls that I eventually had to block. Undeterred, they began calling me at work. When I refused to engage with them, they took matters a step further by showing up at my workplace, causing a commotion and creating a scene. "Release our son. It's your fault for being such a career-focused woman that our son strayed. He'd be happier with his lover, so stop interfering," his parents demanded. In response, I exclaimed, "What are you talking about? I'm the one seeking a divorce from Donnie. He's the one resisting, and besides, the woman he cheated with has no interest in reconciling with him. He deceived the daughter of a business executive into a relationship, and they're rightfully upset. This is going to cause a lot of trouble." Upon realizing that their son had injured a significant client, my in-laws swiftly changed their tune and attempted to reconcile with me. "Oh dear, we had no idea it had escalated to this point. We must have misunderstood. We apologize. Our son has acted foolishly, but he's regretful. You'll forgive him, won't you, Jennifer?" they pleaded. "I must decline. You've just criticized me, and now you expect me to forgive you. Please leave," I asserted firmly. Refusing to budge, they persisted, prompting me to have them escorted out by security. Their disruptive behavior led my company to take legal action against them for obstructing business. Following these events, I finally received the compensation owed to me by my husband and proceeded with the divorce. Additionally, the other woman's family sought compensation for the breach of her chastity and the costs of her psychiatric treatment, with the repercussions of his actions tarnishing his reputation at work and the financial strain of hefty compensations. My husband found himself overwhelmed with debt. Unable to afford to resign, he found himself trapped in a difficult situation. After 2 years of being away on assignment, things had finally calmed down. As I prepared to return to the main office, I reflected on my journey. Successfully completing my assignment had been a significant achievement, leading to my promotion to department manager. It dawned on me that had I not taken on this assignment, I might still be stuck in a loveless marriage. Yet deep down, I knew that a man like him would have strayed sooner or later, and conflict with his parents would have been inevitable. Through this experience, I've come to understand that I'm better suited for the demands of work rather than the complexities of family life. Now, I find myself immensely fulfilled and content. I attempted to whip up a homemade pasta dish with a creamy sauce, hoping to treat everyone to a delightful meal. "Please savor it while it's still warm," I urged as I served the plates. However, as the dish reached the table, an unpleasant odor wafted from it, immediately dampening my enthusiasm. Hesitant, I paused before taking a bite. "Aren't you going to eat it? Don't you like my cooking?" Holly's accusatory tone caught me off guard, her eyes fixed on me as if daring me to criticize. Caught in her unexpected scrutiny, I felt the pressure mounting, but rather than confront her, I discreetly switched my plate with my son Aiden's, hoping to spare him from whatever foul concoction lay before us. As Aiden eagerly dug in, my heart raced with apprehension. Yet to my horror, he soon began to foam at the mouth and collapsed, sending panic rippling through the room. As Holly feigned confusion, I saw through her facade. Anger simmered within me at her malicious intent. Determined to retaliate, I silently vowed to expose her deceit. My name is Susan, and at 62, life had settled into a quiet routine with my husband after Aiden's marriage. But when Aiden confided in me about his wife's cooking, I initially brushed it off, chastising him for his ingratitude. Yet his unusual reluctance to eat piqued my curiosity, so I extended an invitation for dinner, hoping to bridge the gap with Holly and foster a harmonious relationship. Little did I anticipate the audacity of Holly's actions. When they joined us for dinner, the evening unfolded without incident, leaving me to ponder the unsettling events that had transpired. "I hope it suits your taste, Holly," I ventured as she sampled the dish I had prepared. "It's delicious," she replied, her expression lighting up with satisfaction. Grateful for her approval, I couldn't help but feel a sense of pride at her compliment. "I'm glad, thank you," I responded with a smile. Holly continued, expressing her admiration for Aiden's fond memories of my cooking. Her words made me blush with embarrassment and pride all at once. "And I'd also made a dish for you as a gift," Holly announced, placing a large container in the center of the dining table. Curiosity piqued, I inquired about the contents. "Holly, what on earth did you make for us?" "It's a French dish called quiche," Don't you know it? She replied confidently, opening the container to reveal its contents. However, what greeted us was far from appetizing. The burnt surface and the gooey, undercooked interior emitted a foul odor that made me involuntarily grimace. You just mix the dough and bake it so it's easy to make, Holly explained, seemingly unfazed by our reactions. Despite my reservations, I timidly picked up my chopsticks to give it a try. But the undercooked dough made me hesitate, and even my husband refrained from taking a bite. Seeing our reluctance, Holly's insistence wavered. "Mother-in-law, aren't you eating it?" she questioned, her tone strained. "I'm sorry, but I feel like it's a bit undercooked. Can we go ahead and reheat it?" I suggested gently, hoping to avoid any offense. Holly's reaction was palpable as she frowned at my critique. "Never mind," she muttered, slamming the container onto the table with a hint of frustration. "I didn't think I'd be treated like this just for burning a dish. Do you think you can do anything just because you're good at cooking?" Holly's frustration simmered as she confronted me. "Holly, calm down before you complain to Mom. Don't you think you should try it yourself?" I interjected, trying to diffuse the tension. "It's easy to make, so I don't need to taste it," Holly retorted, her tone defensive. "But why aren't you eating it either? How can you serve food to people without tasting it yourself? Just try it," I urged, realizing my unintentional rudeness. Attempting to mediate, I sought to calm their escalating argument, but Holly remained indignant, her laughter edged with bitterness. Aiden, sensing the tension, apologized and followed her out of the room, leaving me feeling overwhelmed in the silence that followed. "At this rate, she'll think I'm giving her a hard time," I lamented to my husband, contemplating the leftover container before us. "I'm not cocky about being a good cook. I'm just average," I confessed, my concern growing about finding a peaceful resolution. We debated whether to intervene further, ultimately deciding to maintain a distance and let them manage their household affairs. Yet despite our efforts to stay out of it, Holly's visits to her house increased inexplicably. "Mother-in-law, will you please make lunch and put dinner for Aiden in a container to take home?" Holly's sudden request caught me off guard, her presence unaccompanied by Aiden. Surprised by her abrupt visit, I found myself faced with empty containers, tasked with catering to her demands once again. I approached Holly, sensing a shift in her behavior. "Is everything all right? Aiden seems to prefer your cooking, so I thought I'd ask you to make our meals from now on," she stated matter-of-factly. "That's a problem, Holly. Why don't we cook together?" I suggested, hoping to foster a sense of camaraderie. But her response was swift and dismissive. "No, you're just going to make that disgusted face again. You're just giving me a hard time." Her words left me speechless, the divide between us growing wider with each passing moment. Despite my attempts to explain, she seemed resolute in her belief that I was a terrible mother-in-law. Though cooking wasn't a burden, the thought of preparing meals daily for a daughter-in-law who harbored such animosity was daunting. I considered offering to teach her some simple dishes, but she adamantly refused. "You're good at cooking, so just make it for us. And please take care of tomorrow's meal too," she demanded, her tone increasingly brazen. Despite my efforts to reason with her, she only became more obstinate. On days when I declined, she resorted to buying prepared food, causing tension between her and Aiden. "Aiden was spoiled by you, wasn't he? He just gobbles up store-bought food," she complained, her frustration evident. "He's always loved eating since he was young," I defended gently, trying to ease the tension. As the days passed, Holly's visits to her house became more frequent, relying on us for her meals and Aiden's dinner. Eventually, she insisted I make Aiden's lunch and deliver it in the morning, leaving me deeply troubled by the turn of events. I approached Aiden, expressing my concern about Holly's frequent visits. To my surprise, he began offering money for their meals to avoid her cooking altogether. "If you're willing to spend that much, why not encourage Holly to learn to cook?" I suggested, hoping for a compromise. But Holly refused, citing hurt feelings. As tensions mounted, another conflict erupted when Holly discovered Aiden's financial contributions toward our food expenses. "Why are you paying your mother? Is this supposed to be an allowance?" I didn't agree to this, Holly protested, her frustration palpable. "It's because you're making my mom cook for us. What's wrong with paying for our food?" Aiden retorted, trying to justify his actions. Despite our efforts to resolve the issue, Holly remained adamant, viewing our actions as a slight against her. No matter how much we tried to reason with her, Holly refused to listen, insisting that not eating her cooking constituted harassment. Feeling caught in the middle, I decided to step back from cooking for them, hoping it would bring some resolution, albeit temporary. However, Holly remained displeased, and I realized it was futile to continue intervening. Reluctantly, I urged them to resolve their differences on their own. Weeks later, on a calm afternoon, Holly visited again, but this time, Aiden was by her side. The unexpected sight left me on edge as I greeted them at the entrance, uncertain of what lay ahead. "I want you to teach me how to cook." Holly finally agreed to listen to reason. "Please, just this once," I implored, relieved that our discussion had led to a positive outcome. Together, we made our way to the kitchen, where Holly arrived with her own ingredients, displaying a newfound motivation. However, to my surprise, she insisted on working alone and promptly ushered me and Aiden out of the kitchen. Confused, we exchanged worried glances, but Holly remained firm in her decision. "I can't concentrate if I'm not alone," she explained, refusing to entertain our assistance. As we anxiously waited, Holly called us back into the living room after just a few minutes. With a sense of anticipation, she served us pasta she had made in the kitchen. Though the pasta seemed hastily prepared, I hesitated to voice my concerns, but as I began to mix it with my fork, I noticed foreign objects in the cream sauce, remnants that resembled herbs but emitted an unusual scent reminiscent of air freshener. Aiden, however, seemed undeterred as he eagerly sampled the dish. "It's delicious," he exclaimed with surprise, his enthusiasm palpable. Encouraged by his reaction, Holly beamed with pride. "Wow, it's good. Holly, you've learned to make this kind of food," he praised, his words filled with admiration. "I always cook properly. Look, even my mother-in-law, there's no way she wouldn't eat it," Holly asserted confidently. "Mom, it's fine. It's just a normal pasta," Aiden reassured, though his comment would typically provoke Holly's fury. However, she appeared indifferent and urged me to eat quickly. Despite her insistence, the stronger the strange smell became as I mixed it, the more hesitant I felt. "Why won't you eat it?" Holly questioned, suspicion creeping into her voice. "So, my mother-in-law just wanted to mess with me, right?" "That's not true. It's just that," I began, but was interrupted by Holly's ringing phone. She hastily excused herself from the table, leaving the room. Seizing the moment, I urged Aiden to secretly exchange the pasta. He complied, happily indulging in a second serving. But within moments, he recoiled and collapsed, foaming at the mouth. I couldn't contain my shock, letting out a scream. "What happened? Why did Aiden collapse?" I cried out. Hearing my distress, Holly rushed back into the room, her concern evident as she knelt by Aiden's side. As I dialed for an ambulance, Holly appeared bewildered and asked what had happened to Aiden. Once Aiden was rushed to the hospital and had his stomach pumped, my husband and I arrived, relieved to see him lying on the hospital bed. But before we could express our concern, Holly questioned Aiden about the incident, echoing her earlier confusion when he collapsed. "Hey, why did Aiden collapse? How come?" she demanded, her agitation palpable. "Ollie, please calm down," my husband interjected, attempting to diffuse the tension. But Holly's accusatory tone persisted. "It should have been you. Did you force Aiden to eat it?" "What on earth are you talking about, Holly? What did you do?" I pressed, bewildered by her accusations. Holly's response was shocking. "You insulted my cooking, so I thought I'd get back at you," she admitted, her tone laced with bitterness. "Get back at me," I exclaimed, incredulous. "It's also my mother-in-law's fault that Aiden won't eat my cooking." Aiden has always been on her side. Though neither Aiden nor I intended to hurt her feelings, Holly remained steadfast in her accusations. "That's why I thought everything would be peaceful if my mother-in-law wasn't around," she continued, unapologetic. It became evident that Holly had indeed tampered with the pasta she served me, as the white residue turned out to be detergent. Thankfully, no serious harm was done, but the situation could have been far worse. Though Aiden should have noticed the strong smell, I couldn't ignore Holly's reckless actions. "If you're saying it would be better if I wasn't around, then all you needed to do was try harder at cooking," I retorted, exasperated by her lack of remorse. "But if you were still alive, Aiden would always be on your side, wouldn't he?" Holly countered, her unapologetic and unreflective attitude leaving me at a loss for words. Disappointed, I let out a heavy sigh, my shoulders slumping in defeat. Beside me, my husband shook his head in quiet dismay, realizing the extent of Holly's misguided actions. That's enough, Holly, I said firmly, attempting to rein in her childish rebuttal. I'd like to have a talk with your parents as well. Why? She protested, her confusion evident. Because talking to you won't get us anywhere, I explained, resolved to involve her parents in the discussion. After Aiden's safe recovery and discharge from the hospital, we convened a meeting with Holly's parents. Though Holly was initially resistant, I persisted, arranging the gathering and initiating the conversation. I deeply apologize for the tremendous trouble our daughter has caused you, Holly's mother, Kate, expressed remorsefully upon our meeting. Oh no, it's something my mother needs to apologize for, Holly interjected defensively. Kate's stern glare silenced her, prompting Holly to bow her head in contrition. Throughout the discussion, Kate's strict demeanor raised questions about Holly's behavior. We'll cover the medical expenses, and if there's anything else she can do to make amends, please let us know, Holly's father offered, attempting to rectify the situation. But Holly refused to relent. Stop it. I'm not paying any money, she protested defiantly. Turning to her, I asked the question that had been weighing on my mind. Holly, can you tell me why you did such a thing? At the hospital, I confronted Holly about her accusations. It's because Aiden only ever takes your side, she insisted, continuing to blame me for mocking her cooking and for the circumstances that led me to take over cooking duties. Unable to bear her attitude any longer, I revealed a certain photograph to Kate, her mother. What is this? Kate asked, visibly shaken as she examined the dish Holly had brought to our house, claiming it was a quiche. You served such a terrible thing to someone else, Kate scolded Holly harshly, her disappointment evident. With no defense left, Holly hung her head in silence as the lecture continued, leaving us no chance to intervene. Eventually, Holly admitted to everything, revealing her belief that if she could get me hospitalized, she wouldn't have to take care of me. The absurdity of her logic left me reeling. I'm sorry, but I can't continue our married life after being subjected to something like this, Aiden declared, his frustration evident. Why not? It's not my fault. You shouldn't have taken your mother's side, Holly retorted, her defiance crumbling under the weight of Aiden's words. You be quiet. You could be turned over to the police for this, I interjected, watching as Holly paled at the mention of the authorities. Though there was some trouble regarding compensation and hospital fees, Kate promised to make Holly pay, de-escalating the situation. Though Holly initially acted like a child, she seemed to reflect on her actions after Aiden broke up with her. Later, Anne discovered that Holly's parents, whom she claimed not to get along with, were actually professional chefs. Seemingly rebelling against their strict culinary standards, Holly had adopted unorthodox cooking methods after getting married. Learning of her parents' anger and the so-called bridal training she was undergoing, I realized the importance of teaching my son basic household chores. Aiden, appreciating the privilege of having someone cook for him, began making simple dishes on his own, sometimes joining me to cook meals together. Surprisingly, my husband also became interested in cooking, and the three of us now enjoy cooking together with occasional role reversals where they handle the cooking while I relax. It appears my husband has fallen under some devilish influence. I've made the decision to transfer ownership of this house to Susan. Should anyone oppose me, be prepared for the possibility of divorce. My husband intends to bestow our home, registered under my name, to the spouse of our eldest son, a true harpy who should vacate immediately. This conniving wife has manipulated my husband to her advantage, but I shall reclaim what's rightfully mine. I find it rather amusing, really. I can easily manage the monthly mortgage of $1,800 on my own. As it seems, even my eldest son has aligned with her. Well, I no longer hold any sentimental attachment to this decrepit abode. I shall relocate elsewhere. Rest assured, all three of you will face the consequences. Prepare yourselves. My name is Grace, and I am 60 years old. I hold an executive position in a prominent corporation. I reside with my husband, Robert, who is 2 years my junior. Just last year, we embarked on renovating our ancestral home in anticipation of our future. Built by my father, the house had aged considerably and required updates to accommodate our advancing years. However, due to our age and the extensive renovations, the loan amount is somewhat burdensome at $1,800 per month. However, the loan amount is well within our means, and I've been assured of its approval given my executive position in a major corporation. Interestingly, Robert, my husband, manages a small restaurant, earning less than me, which seemingly facilitates my loan application process. Yet, solely relying on my income to repay the loan would pose challenges. Although the house originally belonged to your father and is now in your name, I can't help but feel guilty. Would you be able to cover the entire loan amount? In return, I'm more than willing to increase my contribution towards our living expenses. We jointly deliberated on the decision to renovate, and the transformation of our home is nothing short of remarkable. Its newfound beauty and comfort are almost surreal. Renovating the very house I grew up in brought me immense joy, fostering the hope of a lifetime within its walls. I never imagined the day would arrive when I have to bid farewell to this cherished home. Then one afternoon, my phone buzzes with a message. "I'm getting married," announces my eldest son, Jack, through the receiver. At 31, Jack holds a prestigious position as a section chief in a major corporation. He's always been diligent, immersing himself in studies and extracurricular activities, and his dedication has only deepened in adulthood. Despite his achievements, discussions of his romantic life have been scarce. Naturally, I found myself intrigued by the woman Jack intended to wed, a subject of much speculation. What manner of person could she be? If she has captured Jack's heart, she must possess remarkable qualities. Yet, a pang of concern gnaws at me. Could she be scheming, taking advantage of Jack's limited experience in matters of the heart? The anticipation and nerves swirled within me as we awaited the arrival of our son's significant other for the first time. Finally, the day arrived, and a poised woman with chestnut locks draped in a pristine white chiffon dress graced our doorstep. "I'm Susan, pleased to meet you." She greeted us with impeccable manners and a tidy appearance, leaving a favorable first impression. Flashing a brilliant smile, she extended her greetings to both Mom and Dad. Observing her, I couldn't help but feel reassured. Jack could surely be entrusted to her care. It seemed Robert shared my sentiments, his grin mirroring my own. "She's a keeper," he whispered in approval. Susan, catching his words, clasped Robert's hand and met his gaze earnestly. The intensity of the moment left me questioning her motives. What was she playing at? Taken aback by her sudden closeness, I instinctively recoiled, sensing Jack's own surprise, though Robert appeared unperturbed. While I harbored no feelings of jealousy, the encounter left an uncomfortable knot in my stomach. What are you doing?" I questioned, my tone tinged with uncertainty. "Thank you," Susan replied, her response doing little to ease my unease. Sensing Jack's discomfort, I directed my attention towards Susan, only for her to stammer apologetically, "Oh, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have overstepped on our first meeting. I'm truly sorry," hastily releasing Robert's hand. I often hear that I lack awareness of personal space. It's never my intention to cause offense. I just end up doing it. I'm really sorry. Despite her sincere remorse, I couldn't help but feel taken aback by her behavior, a stark contrast to my initial positive impression. But Jack is absolutely smitten with her, even with her unconventional behavior. Robert interjected, his tone tinged with fondness. Susan's lack of personal space is actually one of her endearing qualities. She's the one who took the initiative with me despite my shyness around women. Thanks to her, I've been able to open up and envision a future together. Seeing Jack, who's usually quite introverted, transform like this, well, I trust him in your hands. Despite my initial reservations, I came to realize that Susan was indeed a kind-hearted person. With my approval granted, their wedding plans swiftly fell into place, culminating in a joyous ceremony just a few weeks later. From the depths of my heart, I wish them nothing but endless happiness. 6 months into their marriage, upon returning home one evening, I was greeted by an unexpected sight. A pair of women's shoes sat at the entrance, and in the living room, I found Susan. "Ah, welcome back, mother-in-law," she greeted me cheerfully amidst the scattered remnants of a drinking session. Puzzled by the scene, I couldn't help but inquire, "What's all this? Why the impromptu party without Jack?" Curiosity piqued, I sought an explanation. "Well, on my way home from work, I ran into Susan. She expressed a desire to bond, so we opted for a drink. With payday still out of reach, we thought home was the best venue," Robert explained, his tone tinged with amusement. "But why not include Jack in the festivities? And I wouldn't want to intrude on the newlyweds' privacy. They could have simply enjoyed a drink at their own place," I countered, tilting my head in confusion. "It could have been fine at our place, but our home is a bit of a mess right now. Susan confessed, her words slightly slurred from the effects of the drinks. But why drink here together? Why not invite Jack? I pressed, puzzled by the unconventional gathering. Having a daughter-in-law visit her in-laws for drinks while they're newlyweds? It's a bit unusual, I remarked, scanning the room for any sign of Jack's presence. Jack's swamped with work, you know, and I've been pulling overtime shifts. It's just so lonely. Susan's voice cracked as tears welled up in her eyes. There, Susan. It's not your fault, I comforted, reaching out to console her. Jack is the one to blame for leaving his newlywed wife alone. Robert consoles Susan, gently stroking her hair. Oh, daddy-in-law, I inwardly cringed at the peculiar sight. It was all rather unsettling. Robert, remember your position. Susan is your daughter-in-law. Showing such intimacy is disrespectful to Jack. I reprimanded him firmly, hoping to steer him back to propriety. However, before I could say more, Susan interjected, Please don't scold daddy-in-law. What? I couldn't help but express my bewilderment at her defense of Robert. Though I had much to say, the exhaustion from a long day at work left me devoid of energy. I'm going to take a bath. Please clean up, I sighed, retreating to the bathroom to seek solace. Resolved to address the situation, I dialed Jack's number to explain the bizarre turn of events. He insists he'll leave work immediately to pick up Susan. Understandable. Susan may be a tad eccentric, but Jack's willingness to drop everything for her speaks volumes about their bond. Still, I can't shake the feeling that life with her post-marriage might be a tad challenging. Despite my uncertainties, I resolve to offer Jack some marital advice when he arrives. Lost in contemplation, time slips away as I soak in the tub. Feeling a bit woozy, I make my way to the living room, expecting to find Jack ready to escort Susan home. To my surprise, Jack, despite being the designated driver, is indulging in a drink. Jack, you drove here, right? You shouldn't be drinking, I gently remind him, only to be met with a cheerful, tipsy response. Susan wanted a drink, so I thought we'd make a night of it, Jack explains, his words tinged with joviality. While I'm relieved my son will be staying the night, the presence of the daughter-in-law who's left a less than stellar impression gives me pause. Suddenly, a sense of bewilderment washes over me. Eh? I stammer, genuinely puzzled. But before I can protest further, Jack, already well into his drinks, interjects, You know, I could drive you guys home. I don't want Susan to overstay her welcome. Despite my fatigue, I offer to chauffeur them home. However, Jack, ever the gracious host, insists, No, I feel bad. Why don't you join us for a drink? I'm rendered speechless. Something feels amiss. Suddenly, Susan flashes a mischievous grin. It's as if she's mocking my confusion. It's just my imagination, right? I try to convince myself it's a misunderstanding. Little do I know, her elaborate scheme has already begun unfolding. The following day, Susan returned, her apologies pouring forth like a flood. I'm truly sorry, she insisted before promptly leaving. I felt a sense of relief wash over me, as if a tempest had finally passed. However, upon returning home that same evening, I found Susan once again present, with no sign of Jack in sight. A wave of despair crashed over me, though the circumstances differ from the previous day. I apologize for disturbing you once more, but I felt compelled to offer my apologies, Susan expressed, presenting me with a box of sweets. I got carried away. My mistake, Robert chimed in, his remorse palpable. While somewhat irksome, their display of contrition signaled a genuine effort to mend their ways. I forgive you. Thank you, I responded, sensing Susan's discomfort and appreciating their attempt at reconciliation. With that, Susan ceased her visits, sparing me further interaction. To be honest, I was relieved. I had no desire to engage with her any longer. Or so I thought, until one fateful day when Robert approached me with a solemn expression, signaling he had something important to discuss. As I pondered what it might entail and remained in the living room, Jack and Susan returned home. It's been a while, I greeted them, only to be met with silence. Perplexed, I wondered if they hadn't heard me. Suddenly, Robert's voice shattered the silence, declaring, I'm giving this house to Susan. If you object, we're getting a divorce. My mind reeled in disbelief. What was he saying? I couldn't comprehend his sudden proclamation. Mother-in-law, please leave, Susan interjected, her words plunging me into chaos. What? What does that mean? I demanded, my thoughts spinning. Hold on, Why are you giving the house to Susan? I pressed Robert for answers, but his response only deepened my confusion. You've been bullying Susan all this time, he accused. Bullying? That's absurd, utterly baseless, I protested, struggling to make sense of the accusations hurled my way. But no matter how vehemently I argued back, Robert wouldn't listen, so shut up. Susan's words hit me like a slap in the face, explaining why she had been in tears, unable to return home until now. Robert's shouting only intensified, while Susan's tears continued to flow. How had things spiraled to this point? Suddenly, Jack chimed in, his voice laden with disbelief. I never imagined my mother would stoop to this. It's beyond messed up. The more I denied the accusations, the more enraged they became. Susan's tears seemed endless. That's it. I'm divorcing you. Leave now. I'm staying here with them, Robert declared firmly. Why should I give my house to Susan? I demanded, incredulous. In response, he shot back, because Susan is deeply hurt. Ordinarily, we demand compensation, but I believe there's a better way. By taking away your prized possession and giving it to Susan, it'll inflict the appropriate amount of damage on you, don't you think? I didn't bully her. Why should I be the one suffering? Besides, Susan quit her job when she got married. There's no way she can afford an $1,800 loan, I argue. Robert's response comes swiftly. Don't worry. We'll put the title in Jack's name. With his salary and his previous employer, we can make the change right away. Despite his assurances, I remained skeptical. Changing the title is no small feat, especially with the loan in place. It's not as simple as just flipping a switch. I doubt the bank will approve it, I counter. Robert, however, remains optimistic. You work for a big corporation, and so does Jack. We should be fine. Besides, I have a friend who works at the bank where you have your loan. I'm sure we can talk to him, and everything will work out. It's baffling where their sudden confidence stemmed from. That's right, an $1,800 loan is a breeze, lol. Jack, emboldened by Robert's assurances, now stands firm in his conviction that I must relinquish the house. Despite my repeated protests, insisting I hadn't bullied Susan and thus wouldn't give up the house, they remain unmoved. Every objection I raise only ignites another heated argument. This is too much, I mutter, growing weary of the ordeal. Through her tears, Susan finally speaks up, her voice trembling with emotion. Mother-in-law, for the sake of this child, please, she pleads, gently caressing her belly. My heart skips a beat as the weight of her words sinks in. No way, Mom. Susan is pregnant, Jack interjects, dropping the bombshell. Given her fragile state, the stress might lead to a miscarriage. So please, reconsider, he urges. Stress during pregnancy is indeed a serious concern, but surrendering my home over baseless accusations seems unfathomable. I'm left feeling bewildered and conflicted. Please just leave me alone for a moment, I murmur, retreating to the bedroom, seeking solace from the chaos unfolding. Doubts gnaw at my mind as I ponder Susan's accusations. Have I unknowingly treated her poorly? I wonder aloud, sinking into the bed, consumed by worry. Then a sudden discovery jolts me from my thoughts. What's this? I gasp, spotting a strand of brown hair on the bedspread. Robert's and my hair are both jet black. There's no plausible explanation for a stray brown strand. Could this revelation hint at infidelity, adding another layer to our already tumultuous situation? My mind reels at the possibility, teetering on the edge of despair. I don't even know what's real anymore. I whisper, tears streaming down my face as I succumb to exhaustion, drifting into a fitful sleep. When I awaken, the room is cloaked in darkness, signaling that night has fallen. As I attempt to make my way back to the living room, voices drift through the air, indicating that Jack and Susan have yet to return home. I wish I could join in for a drink. Robert's voice rings out, brimming with enthusiasm. You can't, remember? You're pregnant, Susan reminds him, her tone equally fervent. Faced with their fervor, I find myself unable to intervene, resigned to the silent turmoil raging within me. Susan's cryptic accusations had left me in a state of despair, unable to bring myself to face the unfolding drama in the living room. Suddenly, the hushed tones of an intimate conversation pierced the silence. "Oh, Susan, I love you," Robert's voice murmured affectionately, followed by Susan's hesitant response, "Stop it, Robert. What if Jack or my mother-in-law finds out?" My heart raced with confusion and disbelief. What on earth are Robert and Susan doing? I muttered to myself, unable to comprehend the scene unfolding before me. Don't worry, Jack is passed out drunk, and Grace hasn't emerged from her room in ages. She's probably fast asleep by now. Robert reassured Susan, his tone laced with amusement. The realization hit me like a ton of bricks. So they've been planning this all along. I realized, a surge of nausea rising within me. They kicked me out of my own bed to have their tryst with Susan, hidden from Jack. My home, a mere venue for their illicit affair, I concluded bitterly, feeling utterly betrayed. Fine, I'll let go of this wretched place. But mark my words, there will be consequences. The following morning, I feigned sleep in my room, pretending as though nothing had transpired. Truthfully, I couldn't bear the thought of sleeping in that bed any longer, and the shock of the previous night had rendered sleep elusive. Finally summoning the courage to relinquish the house, I declared, I've decided to hand over the house. The reaction was immediate. A collective grin spread across their faces. Fantastic, let's initiate the transfer of ownership right away, Robert exclaimed eagerly. I'm sure I can secure a loan approval in no time, Jack chimed in, his excitement palpable. It pained me to see him so oblivious, but I refrained from speaking the truth to a son who seemed wholly under his wife's sway. Not yet, I interjected, delaying the proceedings. In the days that followed, divorce procedures and the transfer of ownership consumed our time and energy. It was a grueling process, but we persevered, ultimately succeeding in changing the ownership. From today onward, it's no longer your house, Robert proclaimed triumphantly. Get out of here, old lady, lol. Susan's spiteful whisper sent a surge of anger coursing through me. I'll leave, you don't have to tell me, I retorted, masking the hurt beneath a veneer of indifference. Surrendering the house I had called home for a lifetime was undeniably sorrowful, but it had morphed into a den of betrayal. Yet, I harbored no regrets. From now on, I'll turn the tables on these three in their twisted dynamic. They'll rue the day they crossed me, I vowed silently. Nearly a month after vacating the premises, I felt ready to execute my plan. Returning to my former home, I hesitated only briefly before ringing the doorbell. What does a stranger want here? Robert's voice, tinged with anger, greeted me even after all this time. May I come in? I have something important to discuss, I stated assertively, unwilling to be dismissed so easily. Why should I let you in my house? Robert hesitated, clearly reluctant to entertain my request. It's for Susan's sake, too. I have something important to share, I insisted, hoping to pique his curiosity enough to grant me entry. The mere mention of her name was enough to sway Robert, allowing me entry without hesitation. Though I felt a wave of disgust at the thought of invoking her name, I knew Robert's weakness for her, so I played that card. An outsider is here, Robert announced, a term that stung, considering our former marital status. His choice of words irked me, but I pushed aside my irritation, focusing on the task at hand. What do you want after all this time? He demanded, the tension palpable in the room. I want you to look at this, I replied, laying out the photos before them. What? What is this? Robert's voice betrayed his confusion as he studied the images before him. These are, he began, his words trailing off as he recognized the figures in the photos, himself and Susan, captured on what appeared to be a date. In truth, since our divorce. I had enlisted the help of a private investigator to track their movements, resulting in these incriminating snapshots. Just a moment. What are you trying to insinuate with these photos? Robert's tone turned defensive, attempting to downplay the significance of the evidence before him. We're simply a close father-in-law and daughter-in-law, nothing more, nothing less, he asserted, his words ringing hollow in the face of the damning evidence. Yeah, why are you resorting to such underhanded tactics? What do you hope to achieve by presenting these nonsensical photos? Susan chimed in, her tone laced with disdain. Despite their protests of innocence, I remained unconvinced. Well, how about this? I announced, retrieving my smartphone and playing a recorded conversation. I really do love Susan. Hey, if you speak so loudly, Jack and mother-in-law will wake up. Robert's voice echoed through the room, followed by Susan's murmurs. What? What's this? Robert's voice trembled with disbelief as he listened to the recording. Actually, the day I discovered your relationship, I had recorded your conversation. I explained calmly, though my heart raced with anger. No, this is a misunderstanding, Robert protested desperately, his words falling on deaf ears. What misunderstanding? This is clearly not acceptable, Jack interjected, his fury palpable. She kept her head down. I added, deciding to stoke the flames further. Listen, I hate to ask, but who's really the father of that baby in your belly? I pressed, watching as Jack's complexion turned ashen. Is it with a dad? Jack's voice quivered with fear. No way, my father-in-law was pulling out every time. Oh, Susan's words trailed off, a realization dawning upon her too late. You just admitted it, didn't you? You just admitted it. Robert and Jack erupted into shouts, their anger boiling over. In the chaos that ensued, they ended up wrestling with each other, their scuffle abruptly interrupted by Susan's cry of pain as a cramp seized her stomach. I've been saying this all along, haven't I? I haven't been bullying Susan. Could it be that you were lying just to drive me away, to manipulate Jack? I interjected, my voice laced with frustration. Jack recoiled in disbelief. You're kidding. What the hell? That's just messed up with you guys, he exclaimed, his trust shattered. Unable to trust even my own mother, I watched as Jack grappled with the betrayal, his sense of guilt palpable. Now that you understand all this, spill everything, he demanded angrily, his gaze fixed on the two culprits. Reluctantly, they confessed, revealing, we have enough evidence. Here, are we going to court? The mere mention of the word court seemed to loosen their tongues, and they began to speak. Apparently, Susan initially loved Jack, but upon seeing our newly renovated and beautiful home during their marriage proposal, she grew envious. My parents' house was pretty run down, and I was jealous of a beautiful house like this, she confessed bitterly. The interior was quite nice too, she explained tearfully. It became evident that the woman who coveted a home like ours had meticulously orchestrated her plan to win over Robert on the day of the marriage proposal. So she intentionally ambushed Robert after his work without inviting Jack and brought him home. For several months, as Jack remained absent, she cultivated a relationship with Robert and plotted to push me out. Then why not propose to live together from the beginning? I questioned. She paused before replying. I have a negative perception of mothers-in-law. At home, my mom and grandma fought every day because my grandma bullied my mom. I didn't want to subject myself to living with a mother-in-law. The only way to live comfortably in a beautiful house was to get rid of the mother-in-law. Indeed, with such a perception, living with a mother-in-law would be undesirable. But to pursue your father-in-law? What did Robert think about this? I pressed further. I knew I was being manipulated, but when she greeted me with a smile, held my hand, Robert's admission trailed off, revealing his vulnerability. Despite being aware of being used, he seemed to have succumbed to her charm, choosing to abandon me to keep her by his side. You guys, you're the worst. Jack's words hung heavily in the air as the two offenders hung their heads, tears streaming down their faces. Following Jack's natural decision to divorce, he opted to verify the child's DNA, revealing Robert as the biological father. I won't pay child support, Jack declared, demanding compensation from the guilty parties. Of course, me too. I can't believe I'm suing my own father for compensation. I consoled Jack, gently patting his head as he grappled with the shocking revelation. That deceitful woman had upended all our lives, but she would soon come to regret her actions more than any of us. My intuition proved correct. 2 years later, she remarried Robert, choosing to endure their union for the sake of their child. Placing their offspring in daycare, she resumed work. Look, Daddy, Uncle came to pick you up today, she chirped to their child, unaware of the disapproving glances from other mothers at the daycare. The children seemed to be adjusting well, but she's struggling to connect with other moms, feeling isolated. When she attempted to explain her divorce and remarriage to her own parents, their fury was directed at Robert, leading to their estrangement. It's all a consequence of her choices. As for the house, Jack now resides there alone. I contemplated selling it, but couldn't bear to part with it, considering it's been Mom's home since birth, a repository of cherished memories. Despite my insistence that the house felt eerie after everything that happened, Jack couldn't bring himself to sell it due to overwhelming guilt. Perhaps influenced by my constant aversion to the house, Jack arranged for it to be professionally cleaned and cleared out of all remnants of Robert and Susan. Despite his efforts, Jack felt remorseful, acknowledging the pain he caused Mom. Even though it was because of that woman, I did something terrible to Mom. I know you probably won't forgive me, but please visit me or come to the house on a whim. And let me show you some devotion, he pleaded, offering me a ticket for a hot springs trip. Though I'm not ready to forgive him just yet, Jack's remorse has touched me. I'm considering taking steps to rebuild our parent-child relationship to what it once was. I bought a car worth 100 grand with some old man's money just after my husband's funeral. Ashley and I were mentally and physically exhausted, yet Julia said this with glee. David was happily looking at the contract Julia had brought. Whose money are you talking about? What on earth is going on? I couldn't help but raise my voice in frustration. Despite the fact that Ashley and I were mourning the loss of my husband, our eldest son and his wife seemed not only unbothered but even pleased. The insurance money will be deposited, right? Plus, there should be an inheritance. Out of Julia's bag came, unbelievably, my husband's bank book. Seeing that, I burst into laughter. What's so funny? You're planning to use that to buy. I feel sorry for you because that bank book. My words, spoken between gasps of laughter, turned the faces of our eldest son and his wife pale. My name is Amanda Simpson. I was married to Chris and blessed with 2 children. Our eldest daughter Ashley and our eldest son David. Chris's family has been a line of doctors for generations. Both my father-in-law and mother-in-law have medical licenses. Chris had also been working hard since childhood to become a doctor. Drawn to Chris's hardworking and admirable character, which I got to know through a friend's introduction, we became a couple. Seeing Chris's dedication, our daughter Ashley also decided to pursue a career in medicine. Although Ashley wasn't necessarily academically gifted, she was diligent every day. As her mother, I was there to witness her efforts up close. I didn't force her to become a doctor. However, Chris was really pleased when she decided to become one by her own will. Mom, I got an A rating for the medical university. When she got an A rating from her dream university in high school, I couldn't help but shed tears at her success. No, it's not an acceptance yet. I still have to work hard without letting my guard down. I was genuinely happy to see her grow up to be such a kind and resilient person. But David, our eldest son, was quite the opposite. Born prematurely, David had always been frail, and I admit I might have been overprotective of him. But as David grew up, he got stronger and eventually caught up with his peers in physique. Without attending any cram school, he consistently scored perfect marks in elementary school tests. He grew up wonderfully, which was reassuring. However, the latter half of his middle school years, David started coming home with bruises every day. David, what happened to you? Those injuries. I was concerned, but David started to ignore me. They looked like bruises from fights. Maybe he got into some scuffles. He's a boy, after all. There are times like these. It's kind of a good thing in a way that he's grown up to stand up for himself. As long as he's not causing trouble for others, let him be, Chris said with a laugh. In hindsight, I should have listened to Chris and left things to some extent. However, my overprotective nature towards David made me anxious. I constantly questioned him about the fights and who hurt him, which drove him away. You're so annoying. If you ask me one more time, I'll never speak to you again. Indeed, despite Chris's advice, I kept pushing. After David's stern warning, I reflected and stopped prying. But every time one bruise healed, another appeared. All I could do was watch over him with worry. While David was certainly academically talented, he ended up spending most of his time fighting and went to a local public high school. I hoped that after he outgrew his teenage years, David would discuss his future or college plans, but he remained unchanged. Hey madam, give me some money, he demanded rudely one day. If you think acting like a delinquent makes you cool, you're gravely mistaken, Ashley retorted. Huh? What did you say? David snapped back, and it seemed like a fight was about to break out. The thought of Ashley possibly being harmed left me restless. Don't fight, please. Here, is this for lunch money? I quickly took a $50 note from my wallet and handed it to David. He clicked his tongue in annoyance and left, with Ashley glaring at him. How did it come to this? Did I spoil him too much? Every day I reflected and blamed myself. Even as his classmates began preparing for university entrance exams, David remained unchanged. Chris tried to talk to David multiple times out of concern, but David even began hurling abusive words at Chris. Well, he hasn't done anything that would involve the police, Chris would say. He has been picked up for being out late with friends more than once or twice. In the end, David neither found a job nor decided on further studies and just graduated high school. David, what are you going to do? You can do well if you study. Isn't it better to go to college now? I'm not saying you should become a doctor, but you should get a job. David wouldn't even meet my eyes when I said this. However, a year later, David, who had been jobless and staying at home, approached me. Hey, he said. I thought he might be asking for money again. But when I turned to look at him, David continued, I'm having the kid. I'm getting married. I was left speechless from the shock. David continued, but I'll start working. Can my wife and I live here? Wait, I still don't fully understand the situation. Let's discuss this with your father first. That night, Chris, David, and I had a conversation. We, as parents, came to terms with David's decision to work and his determination to welcome a child and wife. We decided to accept this new family. On the day we were to meet her, Chris, Ashley, and I waited at home. David had gone to fetch her. He's late, isn't he? I remarked. Even after the promised time of 1 o'clock, the two hadn't shown up. We worried that they might have had an accident. We tried reaching out but couldn't get in touch. Contrary to our anxiety, the two casually appeared just before 3. We're back. Wow, this place is massive. It's like a mansion. Oh, nice to meet you. I'm Julia, she said. I was taken aback by the woman David had brought home. Despite claiming to be pregnant, she wore high heels, a short skirt that seemed chilly, and had long, shimmering, pointed nails. In her hand was a plastic bag from a baby goods store, and she greeted us with surprising words. Nice to meet you. I'm David's mother. Really, you're prettier than what David described. Nice to meet you, Amanda. Her behavior lacked any semblance of manners, and I was simply stunned. Where's my room? She asked. Oh, we haven't decided yet, I replied. Okay, I'll just leave the baby stuff in the living room then. With that, Julia entered the house and headed to the living room. She then greeted Chris and Ashley with the same casual tone. The checkout line was so long. Sorry for being late. You all waited, right? Returning to the living room, Julia addressed me, Chris, Ashley, and I could only exchange glances without saying a word. Are you all nervous? Just relax, okay? Chill out. We were simply astounded by her words. We thought today was just a greeting, but Julia came in, placed a ton of luggage in the living room, and acted like she owned the place. Afterward, I greeted Julia again. She was 22 years old and apparently worked part-time at a bar. As a child, her parents divorced and she was raised by her father. However, he later disappeared, and she seems to have grown up in a children's home. I understood it must have been tough without any family, but there are kids who turn out well despite that. I don't think one's circumstances can be an excuse for rudeness. Then Ashley talked to Julia as she discussed her past. How many weeks pregnant are you now? I noticed earlier that you're wearing high heels. Your belly doesn't seem to be showing yet, but it's dangerous. I felt relieved after Ashley kindly said that. Then on Julia's behalf, David spoke up. Right, I thought the same, but Julia apparently only has heeled shoes. Buy her some, madam. Suddenly, the conversation shifted to me, and I was taken aback. Oh, don't be so surprised. You probably don't know my taste, right? If you give me money, I'll choose for myself. I was at a loss for words at Julia's lack of hesitation. Ashley shouted at the two of them. Why should Mom buy it? Why don't you, David? But the baby inside me is her grandchild, isn't it? Julia retorted. So what? It's your child? Ashley shot back. Scary. Is this what a sister-in-law is like? Hilarious, Julia said, mocking her. Ashley was furious at that remark, while Chris just kept silent, his mouth shut tight. What kind of attitude is this? She seems to be looking down on us even though we just met. However, we have to live together from now on. It wouldn't be wise to fight now. Over time, I believe her maternal instincts will grow and she'll change. When that time comes, she should naturally stop wearing heels and remove her nails. That's all I can hope for. Ashley, being a doctor, was particularly concerned about Julia's lack of parental awareness and said sharply, Anyway, make sure you earn and buy your shoes before your belly gets large. Also, remove your nails. If you can't get a pulse oximeter on, they'll forcibly remove them. With that, she stormed out of the living room and locked herself in her room. Julia seemed to be mocking Ashley, but then laughed when David said, Don't worry about her. She's just jealous because I got married before her. Then our life together began. Julia went to work but didn't help around the house. She just slept all day on her days off, using her pregnancy as an excuse. David, as he declared, started working but kept quitting after arguments and then looked for other part-time jobs. The constant job changes were quite headache-inducing, but Chris said nothing about David and Julia. It seemed he had given up on them. Then something unexpected happened. With the baby items ready and the birth of our grandchild just a month away, Chris collapsed at the hospital where he worked. Despite immediate treatment, he couldn't be saved. Even with all the challenges, I had hoped for an increase in family members. I never imagined parting with Chris before that. I was so devastated that I couldn't believe it myself, and Ashley supported me. Inspired by Ashley, I tried to act strong and managed to hold the funeral. On the morning of the funeral, I told Julia, "It's fine if you stay at home, Julia. Your belly is large and it must be hard for you." "Really? Okay, I'll stay home," she replied. In our region, it's customary not to let pregnant women attend funerals. Even without that tradition, she was about to give birth, so I said that out of concern. Julia gladly accepted my offer. It was my suggestion, and I was okay with it, but I headed to the funeral feeling a bit uneasy. David, who arrived late, seemed worried about Julia and was texting her. I did warn him once, but since the baby could come at any time, I decided to let it slide, except during the funeral. After the funeral, when I got home, I was exhausted both mentally and physically. In the living room, Ashley and I were discussing dinner in a daze. Julia came down from the second floor and handed some documents to David. "Tired, huh? Did your old man make it to heaven?" she said, laughing. David laughed as well. "Might be hell," he replied. "You guys just came back from the funeral. What are you even saying?" Ashley was furious, but I didn't have the energy to get angry anymore. "Come on, Ashley, just go with it," Julia said, pointing at the documents she had given to David. Ashley and I naturally looked at those papers. "What's that? What do you mean, go with it?" The heat of the moment left us bewildered and concerned. "I used Chris's money to buy a car worth 100 grand, Julia declared, holding up some documents. Ashley and I stared in disbelief while David looked on happily. "Whose money? What on earth are you talking about?" I raised my voice out of frustration. Chris had passed away, and while Ashley and I were grieving, the couple seemed pleased instead of saddened. "We get the insurance money, right? And there should be an inheritance," Julia said, pulling out a bank book from her bag. "Dad's bank book? Julia, did you steal it when we were out?" "That's a rude thing to say. We live together, so it's not stealing. Plus, I learned where the bank book was from David, right, David?" Julia responded defiantly. It seemed David was an accomplice. What a pitiable eldest son he was. I hadn't anticipated this at all. I looked dejectedly at the bank book in Julia's hand. Chris's name was clearly written on it, but upon a closer look, I noticed something odd. When I realized the cause of the inconsistency, I couldn't help but burst into laughter. Once I started laughing, I couldn't stop. It had been a long time since I laughed so hard. Julia frowned at my uncontrollable laughter. "What's so funny? Have you lost your mind, madam?" David hurled insults at me, but I wasn't even mad anymore. All this time, I thought David was smart, but I was wrong. I felt sorry for the foolish couple. "Let's see, you wanted to buy a car, right? Have you signed the contract? Are you going to use that money? I feel sorry for you. Did you see the balance in that bank book?" Upon hearing my words, David hastily took the bank book from Julia and opened it. "What the hell? There's only $3 in here." The couple looked at the bank book in shock. Yes, that bank book was set for closure, and the balance had already been withdrawn. "This is a joke. There's supposed to be an inheritance. Where is it? And the insurance money should be deposited too." David was furious, and Julia echoed him. "Yes, there's an inheritance and insurance money. Both of my parents-in-law passed away early, and Chris had a lot of inherited and accumulated assets. Notably, Chris wasn't just a doctor, he also owned several hospitals. His total assets amounted to $1 million. However, those were assets he had built, not things he owned. Most of his assets have been donated and are now gone. The medical fees he received from patients, he wanted to use them to help other patients." "What? Didn't you know? He made a large donation, and it was in the newspapers." Hearing this, David began to tremble. He never showed interest in family matters and didn't read the newspaper, so his ignorance wasn't surprising. Moreover, the remaining money is managed in an online bank. I can't access it until we complete the inheritance procedures. Anyway, what about the insurance money? When will it be deposited? Julia rushed, grabbing the bank book and approaching me. Ashley, standing next to me, began to laugh. Don't you know, insurance money is not deposited into the account of the deceased but to the beneficiary's account. It'll be transferred to my account and my mother's, Ashley explained, chuckling. Hearing this, Julia's bank book slipped from her hands. David looked dumbfounded, and Ashley and I exchanged glances, stifling our laughter. What am I going to do now? I've already signed contracts, added so many options, and they told me I can't cancel. Mom, please, just this once, lend me some money. David knelt beside the distraught Julia. It had been so long since he called me Mom that it felt unfamiliar, as if a stranger was asking for a favor. I don't know. Figure it out yourselves. I pushed him away coldly. Today, I couldn't forgive the actions of my eldest son and his wife. I'm sure Chris felt the same. Mom, you must be tired. Let's go to bed, Ashley suggested. Yes, I'm not in the mood for dinner either, I added. Ashley and I stood up, ignoring the two who were sweating in the living room, and headed to the bedroom. It seemed that during the funeral, David had been communicating with Julia about a deal. I thought they were concerned about their health, but it seemed the car was more important than their unborn child. In his lifetime, Chris always said he didn't want to leave a single penny to David and Julia. As planned, the insurance money was transferred to Ashley and me. Chris died young, and David, even after starting a family, remained unreliable. Chris had thought about what might happen after his death and even left a will. According to the will, the real estate, most of the remaining cash, and the hospital were left to me. Ashley was nominated as the successor to this hospital and bequeathed his personal investments. David was given a large piece of land in the countryside. As we opened the will and heard its contents, Julia said, "So, can't we sell the land and buy a car?" Listen to the end. I interrupted Julia and continued reading. With that land and some of the cash, take $100,000 for building a house and leave this home. What does that mean? Julia asked in confusion. We were at the probate court. The will has been validated and carries full legal force. It means exactly what it says. You get the land and money to build a house. You should be grateful, but this house should eventually belong to David, the eldest son, right? I replied, looking at Julia as if she was pleading for help. I responded with a smirk. It's what I received. I decide who to give it to. You damn old woman, better start packing your bags when you get home, huh? Julia retorted. By the way, the land that Chris designated for David was about 30 miles away in the mountains. It was indeed vast but mostly untouched woodland. No matter how large the land is, if the construction cost is $100,000, the house built on it would probably be small. I bet David and Julia, who likely had nothing, would have made a fuss about the inheritance. Whether Chris gave them the land with that in mind, I don't know, but I believe Chris created an environment where Ashley and I can live peacefully. Besides, David and Julia shouldn't even have any right to receive anything. They should be grateful for whatever they can get. A few days later, a grandchild was born. Julia's water broke in the middle of the night, and she was immediately taken to the hospital after making a call. However, due to her dropping blood pressure and the hospital being understaffed at night, Julia had to have an emergency C-section. Ashley had repeatedly told her to remove her nail extensions, but she didn't listen. Apparently, the nurse possibly removed them. No, I just got these done 3 days ago. Don't take them off, Julia. Don't move, the amniotic fluid is gushing out. They apparently had a standoff in the middle of the night. From what I heard from Ashley, this confrontation was more challenging than the surgery. I've never had fancy nails like young people do, but it seems like it was painful. It's undoubtedly a case of getting what she deserved, I thought to myself. Julia, who had been saved along with her child, could no longer stand up to Ashley and quickly became docile. She may be upset about the inheritance, but she's no longer acting superior to us. I hope she's grateful that we let her rest for the first month after childbirth, Mom, Ashley said regretfully. Can we stay here? We don't need the land or the money. No, even if you stayed here, you both only earn as much as part-time jobs and don't contribute to household expenses. I replied firmly. David's plea was met with a firm denial from both Ashley and me. Reluctantly, David went to cancel the car purchase, but he was charged a penalty fee of $10,000, which he had to pay from the $100,000 set aside for construction. Whether they were reluctant to move to the countryside or not, They considered selling the land and renting an apartment. However, the rent was too high for David and Julia's salaries, and there were no buyers for the vast woodland. They realized they had no choice but to build a house on it, as stated in the will. Desperately, they started looking for a contractor who could build a house for $90,000, but it wasn't going well. The baby is still young, so I'm letting you all stay here for now. You can leave whenever you want, okay? I told David, who fell silent at my words. A week later, they found a construction company, but all they could afford was a small prefabricated hut. I didn't expect Julia to keep it clean, so even a small house should be fine. I told the couple who were preparing to move. You'll need to decide on daycare, so until you're settled, I can take care of the baby. You both should become independent as parents first. You're taking our child, you monster, Julia exclaimed angrily, but David stopped her. With just my earnings, it's impossible to support the two of them. Let's leave our baby here until things settle. No way, I'll divorce you then, Julia threatened. Even if you do, you still won't have a home, I interjected calmly. It seemed David was finally facing reality, desperately trying to convince the furious Julia. Then don't make it come to that, I said. I didn't say I'd take her away. If you can, take her with you. When I snorted and said this, Julia bit her lip in frustration and quieted down. She must have realized that she had no choice but to temporarily part with her baby. Afterward, the couple quietly packed their things and left. I did feel sorry for the baby, however, having parents like that might not make much difference. Of course, if they changed their ways, it would be best for the baby to be raised by her own parents. But I couldn't help but think that the baby might be happier being raised by Ashley and me. David and Julia, who moved to their new land, contacted us almost every day. If it was about the granddaughter, I was happy to reply. But all they ever asked for was money. When ignored, they sent pictures of bread for dinner. Seeing this, Ashley laughed. Even if they ruin their health, they won't be able to afford medical bills. In the countryside, a car is essential, I commented. They're currently driving a used car they bought for $3,000, which frequently stalls. They might be saying this to gain our sympathy, but they don't know it's just a laughing matter for us, Ashley added. In this situation, they probably won't be able to take their daughter back, I concluded. But as long as we can live with our adorable granddaughter, I think it's okay. When she turned 3, she was very cute, kind, and nothing like David or Julia. She was a hard worker. Ashley bought her a number puzzle, and she eagerly learned numbers and could already read letters. David and Julia are still living day by day, Ashley observed. Occasionally, when they receive pictures of their daughter, they exclaim, "Super cute," as if looking at a stuffed toy. It still seems impossible for the two of them to become parents, I mused. When the granddaughter grows up, I hope she can learn from her parents' mistakes and grow up straight. That's what I think.
I confronted my husband with the evidence from the detective agency. His face was a mask of resolve as he said, "Roy and I have been having an affair. I'm in love with her, and I've decided to be with her. You need to leave." "Is this really what you want?" I asked, struggling to keep my voice steady. "It doesn't matter what happens next," he replied, his tone unyielding. I took a deep breath and thought about my own life. My name is Amy. I'm 37 years old and work in an office. I live with my husband Ted and our 5-year-old daughter Katie. We're close and support each other through our shortcomings. For now, we're happy as a family. Ted is a fantastic cook and always prepares dinner for us. Since I often work late and put in a lot of overtime, I truly appreciate that Ted handles the housework. One day, my husband sustained an unexpected ligament injury. He decided to play basketball with friends for the first time in ages, pushing himself to make a shot despite not having exercised regularly since starting his job. Although he's 5 years younger than me at 32, his lack of fitness showed. It made no sense for him to act so recklessly, especially with a job and a child to consider. When we were dating, his impulsiveness seemed exciting and new, but now it feels like a major flaw. The injury has landed him in the hospital, requiring him to take time off work. That means I'll have to handle the housework and look after our child alone. Adding to the frustration, the injury occurred at a multi-sport facility, not even a proper basketball court. The company could be outraged if they found out, and he might even face termination. I felt a surge of anger and disillusionment. His irresponsible behavior as an adult has become a serious burden. The doctor said he'll need to stay in the hospital for about 2 weeks. I brought him a change of clothes, a phone charger, and other essentials. "Thanks for bringing these, Amy," he said, his voice unusually upbeat. I couldn't hide my frustration. "Why are you so cheerful? Normally you'd be more upset." "Well, what can I do? It was an accident. Plus, I'll use my paid vacation days, so it'll be fine." "Fine. If it weren't for your injury, you could have saved those vacation days for something important like our daughter's kindergarten event or a family trip. That's what they're meant for. Now your coworkers and bosses will have to pick up the slack because you can't come to work. As for our daughter, I'm grateful my mom could step in and help with her. Without her, I wouldn't be able to manage my overtime, and it would create more problems at work. You need to realize the impact of your actions on everyone around you." I must have been really angry because my complaints just spilled out. My husband looked regretful and said, "I'm sorry. Maybe I overreacted a bit," I admitted, trying to calm down. I told him get better soon, and left the hospital room. Whether my husband was there or not, my work was still incredibly busy. I planned to ask my mother to continue taking care of our daughter for a bit longer. However, when my boss and co-workers learned about my husband's hospitalization, they insisted I didn't need to work overtime. Thanks to their support, I was able to leave work on time, come home early, cook dinner, and enjoy a meal with my daughter. I didn't have to lean too much on my mother, and I was truly grateful for the kindness of my colleagues. A week later, after finishing work, I took my mother and daughter to visit my husband. As we entered his hospital room, I heard him laughing heartily along with a woman's voice. "Oh my God, Ted. Who's that?" I wondered if the woman was one of his colleagues or perhaps a junior from work. When we entered the hospital room, we found a young, slim, and quite attractive nurse there. "Oh, it's your wife and your lovely daughter," she said, giving us a polite bow before leaving the room. "While I'm juggling everything, you're here chatting with a beautiful nurse so casually," I said, my frustration evident. My husband, noticing my icy demeanor, appeared visibly uneasy. "Thanks for coming," he said, attempting to ease the tension. Fortunately, my daughter's presence softened the moment. "Hi, Dad," she said, hugging him tightly and beaming with joy at seeing him for the first time in a week. "Katie, I missed you so much. Is your leg feeling better?" "Now that you're here, Katie, everything will be okay, so you'll be coming home soon." "Yes, I will." "Yay!" Seeing my daughter so happy lifted my spirits as well. I decided to let the scolding wait for another time. After our visit, my mother mentioned, "That young nurse was calling his name in such a friendly way." "Yeah, she was," I agreed. Her tone did sound quite intimate. Although I found it hard to believe my husband would actually pursue anything with a young, attractive nurse, the thought lingered. Maybe she was looking for someone to be interested in her. They say nurses don't meet many men, so she could be quite forward. Finally, after 2 weeks in the hospital, my husband was discharged. On the day of his release, I visited his room and found him chatting cheerfully with that attractive nurse once again. On the drive home, he seemed unusually bored. I would have expected him to be more enthusiastic about leaving the hospital. This struck me as odd, so I decided to hire a detective agency to investigate. The results came swiftly. After his discharge, he was supposed to go to the hospital for rehabilitation. However, his leg was already healed, and he was lying about needing rehab. Instead, he was visiting the nurse's house. I was stunned. How could my husband be having an affair with her? Or beautiful nurses really drawn to such situations? I confronted my husband with the evidence from the detective agency. He didn't hesitate, saying, "Yes, I'm having an affair. I'm in love with her. I'm going to be with her, and you need to leave. I don't care what happens. I'm in love with her." "Fine, do whatever you want. This is absurd," I replied. I packed my things, took my daughter, and went to stay with my parents. When I told my mother what had happened, she was furious. "Knew something wasn't right," she said. "Your instincts were spot on, Mom," I acknowledged. After that, I finalized the divorce with the help of a lawyer, securing alimony and my share of the property. We had some disagreements over the division of assets, but I managed to get what I was entitled to and received the funds I deserved. With that, I felt completely free from my past and ready to start anew with my daughter. But as I began my new life, I started receiving numerous calls from an unknown number. Initially, I ignored them, but their persistence eventually got the better of me. "Hello." Finally, you answer. "Who is this?" I demanded. "Well, who are you?" "I'm Anna, Ted's new wife." "Oh, the woman he cheated with. So what do you want?" "You demanded an excessive amount in alimony and property division from my husband. I had a lawyer determine a fair amount." "Then why does he need to sell the house to pay it?" "That's because his salary isn't high enough." "How can his salary be low if he works for a foreign invested company?" "What are you talking about?" "I'm the one working for a foreign invested company, not him." "What do you mean?" "I'm sure my husband lied to you to make himself look better. I often complained to him about my job and the issues I faced, so he probably used that information to mislead you. The truth is, he's just a regular employee at a small company with a salary that's about half of mine." "That's a scam." "He claimed he worked for a foreign invested company and that he owned the house outright. But the house is actually in both our names and I made the down payment, so if he wants to stay in the house after the divorce, he'll need to pay me half of its appraised value." "Oh no. He's not handsome, doesn't have money, and there's nothing appealing about him." "Well, I suppose he wasn't attractive enough for an affair. He was a good dad though." "Care how good he is with kids. He cheated on me." "I'm sorry to hear that, but you'd better make sure you pay your alimony. If you don't, I'll come after you." Soon after, I received a call from my ex-husband. He was upset because his affair partner had left him just before their wedding. It turned out she had dumped him. But he was the one who lied and tried to impress a beautiful nurse, so he brought this on himself. I told him that if he wanted to address his problems, he should start by earning as much as I do. Then I ended the call. Since then, I only see my ex-husband when my daughter wants to visit him. Each time he sees me, he complains about his situation. I've heard that his injury from playing basketball has caused significant issues at work. His boss is furious, and it seems he'll never get promoted. Honestly, he brought this on himself. Meanwhile, I'm back home, working diligently while my parents help me raise my daughter. Their support allows me to save for her education and take weekend trips with my family. Although I was concerned that the divorce might affect my daughter negatively, she continues to smile just as sweetly as ever. I'm committed to working hard to keep her happy. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe to the channel. See you in the next one. When I returned home from our week-long honeymoon, strange noises greeted me as I walked through the door. Anxiety set in. I feared that the house might have been broken into while we were away. "Did you hear that? Maybe there's someone inside. Should we call the police?" I asked my husband, but he dismissed my concerns with a calm, "It's all right." He strode into the house, and I hurried after him, my heart racing. To my relief, it wasn't burglars but my mother-in-law Kelly and my sister-in-law Jo. They were inside, seemingly at ease. I was puzzled, wondering why they were there. Apparently, they had volunteered to look after the house while we were gone, and my husband had given them a key. I had assumed they would leave once we returned. "It's getting dark. If you don't go home soon, you'll be out of time," I suggested, hoping they'd take the hint. Instead of leaving, they settled in, commandeering the living room and even taking a shower without asking. I hoped they would depart the next morning, but when I came home from work, they were still there. Unable to tolerate the intrusion any longer, I asked my husband to ask them to leave. His response shocked me. "We all live together now, so if you don't like it, you can leave." He was suggesting that I move out instead. I packed a few essentials and left with just a carry-on. My name is Izzy. I'm a 29-year-old magazine editor. 3 years ago, I met my current husband, Alex, through a friend. Prior to him, I had little relationship experience, but I was drawn to his decisive and dependable nature. He expressed his love first and after 3 years of dating proposed. We married, and while searching for a new home and wedding venue, Alex's reliability made everything run smoothly. I enjoyed our life together in the new house. But my mother-in-law Kelly and sister-in-law Jo were a constant source of stress. My father-in-law had passed away a decade ago, leaving Alex's family as just Kelly and 27-year-old Jo. I had minimal contact with them before our marriage and hoped to maintain a polite distance. However, after the wedding, their presence became increasingly intrusive. Kelly began calling almost daily, demanding more money. "Can you increase my allowance? I can't live decently on what you give me. Just $200 more would be enough," she pleaded. I told her to ask Alex, as he was in charge of finances. She accused me of being extravagant and warned me that not taking care of my in-laws would bring bad karma. Despite my attempts to redirect her to Alex, she blamed me for her financial troubles. Kelly also insisted that I visit her more often, help with chores, and send her favorite foods monthly. While Kelly harangued me over the phone, Jo started showing up unannounced, adding to my stress. While I was cooking dinner, Kelly frequently dropped by unannounced, saying things like, "I was in the neighborhood, so I thought I'd pop in. Is dinner ready yet? I'm starving. Hurry up." She would make herself comfortable on the sofa, waiting for me to finish cooking, and then leave after eating. Despite my repeated requests for her to give me notice before visiting and to come less often, she always brushed off my concerns. "Don't worry about it, I'm just stopping by. Just feed me whatever," she'd say dismissively. I tried to address the issue with Alex, and he did speak to both Kelly and Jo about their behavior. Despite this, I didn't feel it was appropriate to be too harsh with them, given that Jo was Alex's sister. 6 months into our marriage, Alex and I finally went on our long-awaited honeymoon in Europe, which had been postponed due to our busy schedules. We enjoyed every moment, unwinding and escaping from daily stress. However, when we returned home after a smooth week-long trip, we were greeted by strange noises coming from inside the house. Panic set in as I wondered if we were dealing with a burglary. "Did you hear that? Maybe there's someone in the house. Shouldn't we call the police?" I asked Alex, but he didn't seem concerned at all. "It's all right," he said calmly, walking into the house as if nothing was wrong. I quickly followed Alex into the house and was relieved to find Kelly and Jo instead of burglars. However, I was puzzled about why they were there. "Oh, you're back. Did you bring me a souvenir? The bracelet I asked for? Did you get it?" Kelly asked, clearly expecting something. "Of course not, it was too expensive," she replied when I said I hadn't. While the three of them chatted away happily, I couldn't help but wonder about their presence. Why are you guys here?" I asked. Kelly looked at me with a hint of annoyance. "Are you saying our presence is a nuisance? An empty house is an easy target for burglars while you were on vacation. We went out of our way to protect it, so you should be grateful." Apparently, they had offered to watch the house while we were away, and Alex had given them the key. I had told Alex that he should have discussed this with me first. He replied that he hadn't had time because they had approached him at the last minute. What was done, so I tried to accept that the house was safe thanks to their efforts. As I looked around, however, I saw the extent of the mess they had left. Every room was cluttered with their belongings. Jo's clothes were crammed into the closet, with the overflow strewn across the floor. In the living room, clothes, bags, remote controls, comic books, and other items were scattered everywhere, not just on the table but also on the floor. After a long flight, I was exhausted and frustrated by the thought of cleaning up all this mess. That wasn't the only issue at hand. I had hoped that once we arrived home, Kelly and Joe would leave, but they didn't. It's going to be dark soon. If you don't go home now, you'll be stuck here, I said, trying to be polite. Why don't you let us take it easy today? Kelly responded. Not only did they refuse to leave, but they also took over the living room and started taking showers without asking. They had completely made themselves at home. Expected them to leave the next morning, but there was no sign of them moving out. When I came home from work, they were still there. I told them it was time for them to go. We're family. You don't have to worry about us. Just pretend we're not here, they insisted. Despite their insistence that I ignore their presence, I was the one who ended up cooking, cleaning, and doing the laundry. I felt overwhelmed and frustrated. If I didn't take action, they seemed ready to stay as long as they wanted. I decided I needed to ask Alex to intervene and ask them to leave. As I was tidying up my room, I noticed that one of my limited edition perfumes, worth over $300 and no longer available for sale, was missing. I had been using it sparingly. Panic set in and I asked Kelly if she had seen it, but she claimed she didn't even know I had perfume. When I questioned Joe, she pulled out the bottle from her bag and handed it to me. To my dismay, it was nearly empty. I had been careful with my limited edition perfume, and there was still more than 6% left. When I confronted Joe about the missing perfume, she simply said, "It smells nice, doesn't it?" My friend liked it too, so I lent it to her. She'd offered no apology, and my frustration boiled over. Why did you use it without asking? What you're doing is theft. Didn't you learn that stealing from others is wrong? I demanded. Joe brushed off my anger. I only borrowed it for a moment. Why are you overreacting? If you're so concerned, just take back what's left. If you borrowed it, then give me back what you used, I'd insisted. Fine, but since it's already used, I'll only give you half the money, she retorted. I don't want the money, I want the perfume back, I said firmly. Joe rolled her eyes. You're so unreasonable over a bottle of perfume. I know the brand and it shouldn't be that expensive. She checked the price on her phone and was taken aback. Holy cow, why is it so expensive? Are you really going to spend $300 on perfume? If it's that important, maybe you should have mentioned it. Seeing her reaction, I felt even more disheartened. It's valuable to me, and I only used it inside the house. I never imagined I'd have a relative come into my room and use my things without permission. As we argued, Alex walked in. What's all this fuss about? Alex, she used my perfume and called me a thief, I said, leaving Joe in the living room while I explained everything to him in the bedroom. I'm at my limit. I need you to ask them to leave. Don't get so worked up over something minor, Alex replied dismissively. Also, I haven't mentioned that they're going to be living with us here. My jaw dropped at his unexpected announcement. My mom's house was old and falling apart, so she was considering repairs or moving. We have extra rooms and it's more cost-effective for her to stay here. We decided to live together. Why didn't you talk to me about this? Do you own the house alone? I'm paying the mortgage too. Don't blame me, my mom decided to sell her house on her own. I protested. Alex's response was blunt. We're living together now, so if you don't like it, you can leave. His decision, made without my input, and his suggestion that I leave left me feeling distant and hurt. I realized my feelings for him were fading. I understand, I said quietly. I started packing the essentials into my carry-on case. Alex didn't try to stop me but remarked that running away after a fight was immature before walking out of the bedroom. Kelly and Joe watched with smirks as I packed, and as soon as I left the house, they locked the door behind me. I had no intention of returning. I headed to a hotel and called my boss, with whom I regularly consulted, to request a few days off. During my time off, I searched for an apartment and informed my parents that I had separated from Alex, explaining the situation. They asked what my next steps were, and I told them I planned to get a divorce. In the meantime, Alex sent me a text. "If you're sorry, you can come back. Mommy and Joe both say they'd forgive you." When I called him to discuss the divorce, he initially resisted, saying, "You're divorcing me over this. You just need to put up with it a little longer." Eventually, he recognized my determination and agreed to the divorce. From that point, everything progressed smoothly, and the divorce was finalized within 6 months. I wanted to end things as quickly as possible, so we swiftly divided our assets and I handed over the house to him. We had been married for less than a year and now we were divorced. My friends and coworkers were concerned and curious about what had happened. Initially, I shrugged off their questions, unable to share the details. But as I processed everything, I became more open about the situation. When I told them the full story, their reactions were unanimous. "That's impossible." I appreciated the sympathy from my friends and coworkers. It made me feel a bit better, knowing they were supportive of my situation. After moving out and living alone, I threw myself into work with renewed intensity. Instead of spending time on household chores, I took on 3 times as many projects as usual and even helped out colleagues who were overwhelmed. My boss noticed my dedication and expressed concern, but as I immersed myself in work, the memories of my difficult times resurfaced and I began to blame myself. Despite being grateful for the distraction work provided, Alex called me about 5 months after the divorce. I had left most of my belongings behind when I moved out, so I answered the phone thinking it might be about that. Alex started by asking what I was doing and if I was living alone. His approach seemed unusual because he was typically impatient with vague conversations. I didn't want to waste time, so I asked directly why he was calling. He said he wanted to get back together. I had no interest in rekindling the relationship, so I said no and attempted to end the call. But Alex quickly interjected. "Wait, there's something I haven't told you yet." "I'm busy, so make it quick," I replied. He continued, "Can you lend me some money? I'm struggling to pay the mortgage. It used to be a joint responsibility, so I understand it's hard to manage alone." I knew the amount Alex needed wasn't that significant, but he explained that he had been expecting a raise a few months ago that never materialized. He had also been informed that his performance wouldn't warrant any future increases. Faced with this, he decided to look for a new job, hoping for better conditions. Unfortunately, he only found a lower-paying position and had yet to secure a new role. Regardless of his situation, I wasn't willing to lend him any money. Told him not to contact me again. "You're still single, right? No one will want a middle-aged divorcee like you. You'd be better off reconciling with me," he said. I simply replied, "No, thank you," and ended the call. I couldn't understand why I had fallen for and married him. I was deeply disappointed in my own judgment. After that, Alex, Kelly, and Joe all began to harass me. Through our conversations, I learned that they believed Alex was earning a substantial income due to us buying a new house and having a lavish wedding. Since their allowance hadn't increased and Alex had refused to do so, they thought I was the one preventing it. They had been pleased to live comfortably after I left, but when they discovered Alex's salary was lower than expected, they panicked. They seemed to think that men were paid more than women, but my salary was actually higher than his. I wanted to block all of them on my phone, but Alex knew where I worked and could easily find me. I was anxious that Alex might call me at work or even show up at my office, so I answered his calls a few times. He consistently complained about Kelly and Joe spending too much money and running out of savings. They had started working part-time but couldn't make ends meet because they spent their earnings so quickly. It seemed like every conversation revolved around money. I hoped that if I told him I was in a similar financial situation, he might stop calling. I decided to use this approach the next time he reached out. That day, as usual, Alex called and said, "I need money. I don't have enough to pay the mortgage this month." I replied, "Actually, I'm planning to resign from my job soon. I've spent most of my savings, so I need some money from you. If you think I'm lying, You can check with someone at my work." Alex simply said, "I see," and ended the call. After that, he stopped contacting me. When I shared this with a friend, she informed me that Alex's situation was even worse than I had realized. He had ended up with a lower-paying job, and most of his salary went towards the mortgage. Additionally, Joe had an affair with her part-time job manager, who was married. When his wife discovered the affair, she fired Joe and filed a civil lawsuit against her. Initially, Joe claimed that the manager had pursued her and she didn't know he was married. However, text exchanges revealed she was aware of his wife's pregnancy and still pursued him. The manager and his wife divorced, and Joe faced a substantial compensation claim. Joe's affair and subsequent lawsuit led to her losing both her job and her friends. Alex's family ended up covering the mortgage and the debt from the lawsuit, effectively living in a cycle of debt. Kelly, meanwhile, complained that her friends had grandchildren while her own children were still single and struggling. Alex often lamented to this friend about his daily arguments with Kelly, his current single status, and how women no longer showed interest in him. He had lost weight and looked disheveled, aging far beyond his years. His friend rolled her eyes at his complaints. Had shared the reasons for my divorce with many people, and now this friend was the only one Alex had left to confide in. She was the one who introduced us and felt a sense of responsibility for how things turned out. Although she found his constant drama oddly intriguing, she stayed in touch with him to keep him away from me. As for me, I recently launched a web magazine with a university friend. I left from a previous job and invested most of my savings into the startup. Though it's a small venture and I handle many tasks on my own, I am thrilled by the new challenges. Where I once felt daunted by new beginnings, I now manage them with confidence, having grown from past obstacles. I've also started a new relationship with someone I met at work. He respects my feelings and supports me, helping me realize that Alex was not a decisive leader, but simply selfish. For a while after my divorce, I doubted that I would ever marry or date again. Now I am able to think positively and cherish the new happiness in my life.
You're useless. You can't even handle the chores or take care of the kids, let alone pay the alimony. Kyle spat out as he finally showed up at the hospital 3 weeks after my traffic accident. His harsh words cut through me as I lay there in the hospital bed, hoping he had come out of concern. Instead, he proved to be a disappointment. I sighed deeply. To be honest, I had already been considering a divorce. I didn't expect Kyle to bring it up now, but I guess I should be thankful. It saved us both some trouble. Fine, I agreed quickly, which surprised Kyle. Little did he know, I was already one step ahead. I wanted to tell him that I knew what he was planning and that I was silently laughing at him in my head. My name is Sarah. I'm a 40-year-old housewife living with my husband, Kyle, and our 7-year-old daughter, Lisa. Kyle and I met during a group blind date and got married when I was 30. He was easy to talk to, and eventually, I fell for him. Kyle was charming and the most handsome man at the table when we first met. When he expressed his interest in me, I felt flattered and proud. Kyle was incredibly romantic in our early days. He would surprise me with dessert plates and bouquets at fancy restaurants for my birthdays, take me on trips for our anniversaries, and write heartfelt letters at just the right moments. I felt so lucky to have him and eagerly accepted his marriage proposal, imagining a life full of surprises and excitement even after marriage. But once we were married, things took a turn. Hey Sarah, my dinner isn't ready yet. I've been working all day, and you can't even have dinner prepared when I get back. You're so lazy. Once married life began, he started demanding like he was the master of the house and I was supposed to be his caretaker. At first, I was shocked by the change in him. I thought he was just joking. When we were dating, we used to laugh at each other's silly jokes. We imagined a sweet newlywed life where we called each other by cute nicknames and stayed lovey-dovey even after having kids. But it turned out he wasn't joking at all. He treated me like a servant or something even worse. At first, I would laugh it off, thinking he was joking. But gradually I realized he was serious. He really saw me as his caretaker, and that was frightening. After we got married, I had to quit my job, and we depended on the money Kyle earned. I was scared that if I didn't do as he said, he might cut me off financially, so I felt trapped. Honestly, Kyle's income wasn't great. I was making more when I was working. Kyle only finished high school and jumped from one job to another. His unstable work history continued, quitting jobs every year or two. It seemed Kyle felt insecure about his background and took out his frustrations on me. I'm sorry I got delayed with some errands, I told him once. Don't make excuses, just hurry up and make it, Kyle replied, sitting down with a cold beer. This had become a common scene, but each time it happened, it chipped away at the person I used to be. I sighed and started cooking. My marriage made me miserable, but I managed to get by. The following year, our daughter Lisa was born, and my days became a series of struggles. As expected, Kyle didn't help much with Lisa. However, he would spoil her by buying her any candy or toy she wanted. I tried to raise Lisa properly, scolding her when needed, which made her cling to Kyle even more. Lisa, you like Daddy, don't you? Kyle asked her once. Yeah, Daddy is cool. I love Daddy, Lisa replied. I knew it, I'm super dad, Kyle said, looking at me smugly. It was frustrating, but I couldn't help feeling glad that Lisa loved her father. I just sighed again. Despite his spoiling her, Kyle never attended any of Lisa's kindergarten events like sports festivals or recitals. You know there's a parent-child race at Lisa's sports festival. Could you participate? I asked him. Huh? Why me? You're free that day, you do it, he responded. I'm busy with work every day, but the sports festival could be a great time for us to bond as parents. It's on a holiday, so you won't have to work, I said. Shut up. We're already close enough. Maybe you should work on your relationship with Lisa. She thinks you're mean, you know. You might want to fix that, Kyle said, laughing as he left for work. He called himself Super Dad, yet he never showed up to school events. I was worried that Kyle's habit of being easy on himself but hard on others might influence Lisa. He continued to leave all the housework and childcare to me and was lazy at home. Now Lisa is 5 years old and ready to start elementary school, but Kyle was still jumping from job to job. He had just quit his factory job last month and moved to a food and beverage company. I'll be working weekends at my new job since it's in the food industry, he said. Looks like we'll hardly see each other then, I replied. Can't be helped, it's work, he said. Honestly, I was relieved because I knew that with Kyle gone, my days would be a bit easier. I was tired of Kyle ordering me around on weekends. Now, I wouldn't have to be nagged by him to clean the floor or serve meals quickly. However, with Kyle out on weekends, Lisa would be sad. It's better for kids to spend holidays with the whole family. I have work, so please let Lisa know, Kyle said. I couldn't really argue with Kyle since he was the one bringing in the money. Reluctantly, I went to tell Lisa. I'm sorry, but Daddy won't be able to go out with you on his day off, I said, expecting her to be upset. I told her with a frown, but contrary to my expectations, Lisa seemed unconcerned. It's okay. If you're okay with it, then it's fine. You know he's not going to be here on all weekends, right? Daddy has been smelling strange lately, she said. A strange smell? I asked, puzzled. Lisa nodded and went back to her room. What on earth was she talking about? I've been so busy with housework and taking care of our child that I hadn't noticed much about Kyle lately. Our marriage was not like it used to be, and I tried to avoid being around Kyle to keep things calm. The strange smell Lisa mentioned might be from the factory, I thought. Factories often use special solvents, so it made sense that Kyle could come home with a weird smell. If that was the case, the smell would probably go away soon. Kids are really honest, which is what makes them so endearing. Despite what he said, Kyle started leaving the house early in the morning even on his days off, which was odd. He also left every weekday. If he was working weekends, he should have a day off during the week. He left without saying anything to me, so I couldn't tell if he was going to work or not. I became curious about what he was doing, leaving so early even on his days off. One day, I decided to follow him. I asked Kyle, "You seem to be going out every day off. What are you doing?" Kyle looked confused for a moment, then answered in an annoyed tone while scratching his head. I'm working. I go to work voluntarily. Really? But you should take care of yourself or your body won't hold up, I replied. Shut up. Don't complain about my job, Kyle snapped back. I didn't understand why he got so angry when he often complained about my housework and child rearing. I didn't believe what Kyle said. There's no way he, who usually avoids trouble, would go to work voluntarily on his days off. I knew this from watching him closely over the years. If he was that passionate about work, he would have stayed at his previous job longer. I also started paying attention to the strange smell that Lisa mentioned. Indeed, Kyle came home with a sweet, strong fragrance. This strange smell was not from the factory. Why hadn't I noticed this before? I blamed myself for being so naive and vowed not to make the same mistake again. From then on, I decided to watch Kyle more carefully, especially on weekdays when he said he was going to work. He seemed to wake up an hour earlier than usual and took extra care grooming himself. He appeared to be in a good mood on those days, which vary from week to week, sometimes on a Monday, sometimes on a Thursday. But it was clear that Kyle was happy on those days. One day, when he left the house, I went into his room to look for any clues. I felt like a detective searching the house. Since I always cleaned Kyle's room, I knew it well and didn't feel bad about snooping around. If Kyle had hidden anything, it would be in a place not easily seen. I searched carefully under the desk and bed. Finally, hidden in a candy tin in the closet, I found a bunch of letters. What were these? All the letters were from the same person named Patricia. They had been sent through the mail. The oldest letter was from 4 months ago, and the newest was from yesterday. As I read the letters, I saw phrases like, "I regretted when we broke up, but now I really love you, and I want to go back to the time when I was with you." It sounded like something a lovesick teenager would say. At first, I thought maybe Kyle's ex-girlfriend was sending these letters on her own, but then I read a line that worried me. "I'm glad you like me again. I'm looking forward to our next date." This was from last week. It looked like Kyle was seeing this Patricia. Today, he was definitely up to something. I took photos of the letters with my smartphone as evidence. I thought about taking the letters, but I didn't want to make Kyle suspicious. Even with these letters, I felt I didn't have enough proof. After thinking it over, I decided to hire a private investigator to check on Kyle. 3 weeks later, the investigator gave me the results. He quickly brought photos of Kyle and Patricia close together in the park at night, and even a recording of them saying, "I love you" to each other. I accepted the facts calmly. With solid proof in hand, I went to the municipal office and came back with a divorce form. Now that I knew Kyle was cheating, I had no reason to stay with him. I planned to confront him with the divorce papers the next time something happened. I returned home and let out a deep sigh. I was acting resolute, but honestly, I was heartbroken. I was upset with myself for having married someone as careless as Kyle. I was thinking about resting a bit before making dinner when my phone rang. "Hello?" "Yes, Sarah, do you have time to talk?" "Yes, what's going on?" I was surprised to get a call from my father. He usually doesn't call me. "Actually, your mother and I were talking yesterday, and we're thinking about transferring our assets to you soon." "Huh? What happened?" My father ran a company that sold imported goods to Japanese corporations. I was the daughter of a big company president, but I never told Kyle about this. I thought it would make me sound boastful, especially since Kyle jumped from one job to another. "We're getting old and thinking about retiring. We thought about keeping the company going but didn't want to push it onto you, our only daughter, so we've decided to step back." "I see." I felt guilty about not taking over the company, but my parents respected my decision and had planned for the future. I was deeply touched by their thoughtfulness. "We're thinking of handing over our assets to you. Our total wealth is $17 million, but we're fine with just $3 million. We've decided to give you the remaining $15 million. $15 million? I was shocked. That was more money than I could ever imagine earning in my lifetime. "Yes, there will probably be inheritance tax, but you'll still have plenty left. You won't have to worry about living expenses for the rest of your life," Dad said. "Thank you." I expressed my deepest gratitude to my father and mother and hung up. Soon, $17 million would be coming my way. With that money, I wouldn't have any worries, even if I divorced Kyle. No offense to him, but he probably couldn't earn that much. I felt relieved and was in a daze for a while. Glancing at the clock, it was 6:00 p.m. I realized I needed to make dinner and checked the fridge, but there were no groceries left. I got ready to go shopping at the supermarket. My heart was light, but I also felt a sense of urgency that Kyle might come home soon. As I was hurrying across the last crosswalk to the supermarket, the light turned green. "Watch out," someone yelled, but it was too late. My body was already in the air, and then I hit the ground hard. The sharp pain shot through my head, and without understanding what had happened, I lost consciousness. When I woke up, I was lying on a hospital bed. The first thing I saw when I opened my eyes were my parents and Lisa. "Sarah, thank goodness," Mom said. Lisa was crying next to me. I gently stroked her head. You were hit by a car and broke both legs. They say it will take 5 months to fully recover. I felt dizzy thinking about being out of action for so long. From that day on, I was stuck in a wheelchair. Although the nurses took care of me, I felt frustrated and annoyed because I couldn't use my legs. During my stay in the hospital, my parents and friends visited me. My parents were now taking care of Lisa, since Kyle was always at work. I thought that was better for her. I was glad everyone visited, but Kyle never came. I started to doubt his care, thinking, aren't we husband and wife? However, 1 week after I was hospitalized, Kyle finally showed up. Hey, feeling good? Kyle asked sarcastically. Yeah, man, it's a mess at home without me, I replied lightly. Kyle always complained about my housework. As soon as he spoke, showing no empathy, I sighed. I had thought he would be at least a little worried about me. What can I do? I was in a car accident. I snapped back when Kyle looked at me with disdain and said, you're useless if you can't do housework or take care of the child. That's the worst, and you should pay alimony. He said such horrible things to his hospitalized wife. Initially, I had hoped Kyle came to visit out of concern, but he was still disappointing. I sighed deeply. Honestly, I have been thinking about getting a divorce myself. I hadn't expected Kyle to bring up divorce today, but it saved me the trouble of arguing. Sure, I said, and Kyle looked surprised when I agreed. Unfortunately, I know what you're up to, I wanted to say, laughing inside. Instead, I pulled out a filled-in divorce form from a bag my mother had brought and held it in front of Kyle's face. You already had this. Kyle was briefly confused, his eyes wide, but then he took the divorce notice from me and filled in his name and address right there. I felt relieved, knowing I wouldn't have to see Kyle's face ever again. I wanted to tell him the feeling was mutual, but I just watched him leave silently. Probably Kyle will remarry Patricia after the divorce. I don't know what kind of woman Patricia is, but it's sad to think she's going to marry someone as controlling and unpleasant as Kyle. I thought to myself. I felt a bit guilty about Lisa, but deciding to leave was something I had thought about for a long time. I promised myself I would take good care of Lisa. A month after Kyle left, my life was peaceful. The time without my husband nagging me felt like heaven. I was released from the hospital and started physical therapy. I decided to stay at my parents' house until my leg healed. My parents were angry at Kyle when they learned about the divorce, but they stopped pressing the issue when I told them I wanted to forget about him. Lisa doesn't seem lonely even without her father around and is going to elementary school happily, I observed. In the end, Lisa also noticed Kyle's domineering behavior and probably didn't see him as a father anymore. I was convinced that divorcing Kyle was the right decision, but one afternoon I got a call on my mobile phone. I ignored it when I saw Kyle's name, but the phone kept ringing nonstop. Eventually, I answered the call. Hey Sarah, when are you coming back? Kyle's words made no sense to me, and he sounded like he was about to start yelling. What do you mean coming back? You're married to Patricia, didn't you? I replied. When I mentioned Patricia's name, Kyle sounded surprised and exclaimed, how do you know that? Did you think I didn't know you cheated? That's why I asked for alimony. Yes, that's right, but alimony and child support, I can't pay that. Why do I have to pay alimony anyway? You, who never did the housework, should be the one to pay, Kyle argued. I was shocked to hear Kyle's argument. I had requested alimony and child support through a lawyer, but he hadn't paid yet. I knew Kyle didn't have a lot of money, but he should find a way to pay. Yet here he was saying something ridiculous like I should be the one to pay alimony. I gathered evidence of your affair through a detective agency. The lawyer has seen it. It seems Kyle had already seen the evidence from the detective agency. That would make things easier, but him calling me was ridiculous. I wanted a divorce even before I found out about the affair because you never helped with housework or childcare, and you complained all the time. I'm not your housekeeper, you know. But it's good you're married now. You have someone else to look after you. But here's the thing. Patricia can't do housework. Before we got married, she said, leave everything to me. But once we got married, her cooking is terrible, and she doesn't clean. I would have been better off with you. Marry me again. After all, you don't have any money, right? Lisa liked me too, didn't she? Kyle said, which annoyed me. What are you talking about? You divorced me and remarried. You're her partner, not my responsibility. And sorry to say, Lisa doesn't like you. And I have money. Don't lie to me. There's no way you have money. You were a housewife. You can't live without me. I had no intentions of telling Kyle about the fortune. I inherited from my parents, but faced with his aggressive attitude, I had no choice but to reveal it. My parents are CEOs. Recently, I inherited their assets. It's around $52 million in total, so I can live without working for the rest of my life, I calmly stated over the phone, picturing Kyle's stunned reaction on the other end. You're lying. There's no way you have such a huge amount of money, Kyle retorted skeptically. It's true. If you want, I can have my parents tell you, I replied, sensing Kyle's disbelief beginning to waver. With that, Kyle finally seemed to believe my words and fell silent. Then he exploded, if it's true, why didn't you tell me? Well, I wanted to tell you, but I knew about your affair and I had already formed a low opinion of you. At that point, there was no issue of property distribution, and I hadn't yet inherited the assets, I explained calmly, not willing to engage in a heated argument. Kyle bit his lip in frustration. He probably never imagined I had such assets. He must have been regretting that he should have never divorced me, but I was resolute. I didn't want to endure his terrible behavior anymore. Can I hang up now? Please pay the alimony properly, reflect on your actions, and never call me again. Goodbye, I said firmly before hanging up. Immediately, I blocked Kyle's number so he couldn't call anymore. Mom, who were you talking to? Lisa walked into the room, curious. Just a friend, I replied, smiling at Lisa. But Lisa, do you want to go to the amusement park this weekend? Yes, Lisa beamed with happiness. Seeing her smile reminded me that her happiness was all that mattered to me. A few days later, I heard that Kyle had broken up with his new wife, Patricia. They argued because she wouldn't do housework, and Patricia ended up leaving him. Kyle, having been divorced twice in a short time, would probably find it hard to get married again. I hoped he would stay single for a while to prevent more people from getting hurt. After the divorce, Kyle lost his motivation and quit his job at the restaurant. He would probably find another job, but it might take him some time to get his life back on track. I felt a twinge of sympathy for him, but his problems were of his own making. I had blocked his calls so he couldn't ask me for money, and I avoided places where we used to go together. In my life, Kyle had virtually disappeared. Eventually, Kyle paid the alimony but ended up in debt. I didn't know how he would manage, but I hoped he learned from his mistakes. I continued to live comfortably at my parents' house. They told us we could stay as long as we liked. After my legs fully healed, I started part-time work at a local flower shop. Even though I didn't need to work, I found it better to be active and leave the house. I worked hard on weekdays and spent weekends having fun with Lisa and my parents. I found more joy in life than before and wanted to keep living happily with the people I loved. I cherished these happy moments, especially when I saw Lisa's smile.